Guys, intro time.
Wait, which intro?
The wisdom check.
Oh, good.
Wait, no. I thought we were keeping the old intro. What's wrong with the old one? People like that one.
It was too long.
Yeah.
Too many fucking gifs.
Yeah.
Yeah, but can we keep the part where I yell more?
No.
But it's the intro to end all intros.
I got like what, 2 lines last time?
Do you want more lines, Tim?
Well, no, not really.
In a world without answers.
Yeah.
Wait, do you want to start with that?
Here we go, exactly like last time.
Wait, okay, so we're doing it the exact same way? Let's start with Smoky Bar.
No, it's a new season. We have to have a new intro.
More.
Not sure why we thought this would go any differently.
Oh, well. Welcome, everyone, to the Wisdom Check, where Jeff and Dustin welcome a guest every week to talk about Dungeons and Dragons. Welcome.
This is ridiculous. I'm starting the stream now.
Wait, where's my die at? Well, we can't start until I botch, and it's not an intro unless I'm botching.
You're on.
All right, and I think we should be live right now. Hopefully, reality tells me I am actually correct, but we'll find out. But welcome to the Wisdom Check. As always, I'm Jeff, one of your co-hosts, and across the way over there is our favorite buddy, our favorite past person that hangs out with me, does this show, makes everything else go around, and that's Dustin. So, welcome to the show, as always, Dustin.
All right, it's always good to be back here every Monday doing this show, talking all kinds of things, tabletop role play and game related. And today we're doing a fan favorite, and that's we're going to be talking a little bit about voicing.
Yeah, that's absolutely correct. We will be fiddling around with some voices, so hopefully you guys have some interesting ones for us. And Animal G, the answer there is no, I don't have a new camera. I've just fiddled with my lighting, and I've turned things and put them in different angles, and I'm trying something new. So if it looks good, let me know. And hello, Zombie Decoy. So yeah, we like to do these things, Dustin was saying, making the voices and doing some goofy things on here, because it's a lot of fun. And we have a lot of enjoyable times doing that. Last few times we made asses of ourselves. It was pretty impressive. I don't know, which one was the hardest one for you so far?
Well, I actually wasn't in the last Voices episode.
Mm-hmm.
You had Levi on here with you, and
That's
Levi,
true.
of course, can do anything. So, you know, anytime you're sitting there with Levi doing voices, you're gonna look bad compared to him because he's fantastic. So
True.
We're playing in the minor leagues today. It's it's just me and you. So
I
we'll
keep
make
hoping to
each
get
other
called
look
up.
all right because there'll be voices you can do that I can't probably, and vice versa. So it'll be a good time.
Yep. Well, it's good to see you, Zombie Decoy. I'm glad you can make it to the stream as well there. Yeah, so this is going to be kind of more of just fan service for the most part. But, aside from us just making voices, there are some other things that are kind of interesting that we've been kind of putting to use recently. So, like, I've been using this voice mod program, and I've been using that in our game. And it's been pretty handy. Like, I just went back and listened to the recordings, to see what it actually sounded like. I had no idea what it sounded like. But I was using it to sound like a little girl, and I thought it sounded pretty decent. And actually, when I wasn't accidentally slipping back into my normal voice with the voice mod on, it was pretty effective. So
you're using a voice mod and you were doing a voice both to get that voice that you needed? Okay.
Yeah, so there's in Voice Mod Pro, there's one that I used. It's adult to children. And if I click that on here, let's see, voice.
So it sounds like this. I can't hear it right now because I don't have it monitored, but I'm assuming it sounds pretty.
Yeah, I don't know if I go with kid with that. That doesn't sound kid to me.
Yeah, but as soon as I start talking like this, it sounds like a little girl.
Yeah, so now it gets a little more kiddish with that.
So it doesn't do it all, but it does a fair amount. So I had to actually kind of fiddle with it, and it's real weird. There's like that option. There's a bunch of other ones on here I'm gonna probably play with throughout the campaign, but it's a lot of stuff where you got to kind of fiddle around with it, see what it sounds like, and see if it's gonna be interesting or not. And you still got to fiddle with it to try to come up with voices at work.
Now, you're a player in my Zweihander game, and I'm a player in your Pathfinder game. So are we going to spoil some voices tonight?
I mean, it's possible. Are we
going to get a little look at or listen perhaps to Jeff's Hobgoblin voice? Like, do you have something in the works for Hobgoblin?
I don't, but it is something I need to kind of come up with. I have more of like visuals in mind and like personality traits. I haven't really worked out a voice yet for a Hobgoblin.
Well, I know when we've done voices before, and I know it's been a long time, so I'm going to say this because anyone who's watching through these episodes later, it'll be 50 episodes since I said this, but I don't always give an NPC a voice. Sometimes even with my own characters, like Bowron doesn't have exactly a voice. It's just an attitude and word selection. So like whenever we're playing video games and people are like, do something in the Bowron voice, I always just laugh a little bit because like Bowron doesn't really have a voice. So
yeah, I guess it is more of a request for you to act, and just to see what that sounds like. So yeah, I mean, you've been using some voices though in your game right in the Zweihander campaign so far, and they've been
I got a lot of NPCs to voice.
Yeah, I mean, so far we've run into we've run into one very particular voice that is very in your face, and it's very notable as to who it is, and so we've got that one, and you kind of did one for his daughter, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah, which is a female dwarf. So those two I've had to do for Jeannie and Halford. Halford is the older male dwarf who I have done my very, very bad impersonation of Randy Macho Man Savage for his voice.
I don't know. It's pretty entertaining.
It's not too bad, I'll tell you right now. We're going to climb up there. We're going to get on this thing and we're going to make it happen.
Yep. And don't think that Mean Gene went without being noticed.
Yeah, I had to because all of Randy Macho Man Savage's interviews always start with, well, let me tell you right now, Mean Gene. So I had to name the daughter Jeannie just for that, so I could use it as my way of getting into the voice better. But when you're talking about elbow drops, it gets real easy. But then when you start trying to talk about other things that the character's talking about, like sometimes, Lindy's here with a rate of 15. Lindy,
nice, welcome
you and your viewers. We're doing some voice acting tonight, and I was just talking, Lindy, because you're one of my players, about my Zweihander game and my use of the Randy Macho Man Savage voice for my dwarf, Halford. And so I don't know if you got here in time to catch it, but I just did a little sample of that. If not, let me know, and I'll do it again. But Lindy's heard it because she's a player. So.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah. So tonight, if you guys want to get in on the action, one of the things we're going to be doing is there's a channel redemption that you can do by clicking the little face at the bottom of the screen over on the chat side. And it'll say wisdom check question. Now, normally that's a way that you can guaranteed get a question asked and answered on the show. But tonight you can also use it. Yeah, thank you. As at Celeste Shepherd, thank you. But you can also use that feature tonight to give us prompts of voices we should try to do, and then we will make asses of ourselves. And it's going to be part of the fun for tonight. Yeah, so Gladius Rex just gave you an example there. So if you go down and click that, you can go ahead and pick something out for us, and like I said, we'll stumble through it. Now, the question I have for you is, why in the world was that the voice you decided to go with?
Well, I talked to this actually a couple of weeks ago. Me and you did like a marathon session, and we got a ton of questions about voices, which is the reason why we decided to do tonight's episode about voices. And I'll answer it then, and I'll say it again. I have pushed very hard in my philosophy of what NPCs and what a game world should be to not use the standard accents for ancestries unilaterally. So like all dwarves will not speak the same. All elves won't necessarily speak the same. I'm shooting more for most games. You only deal with a few individuals anyway. You don't really deal with an entire species. And so I don't do the thing where like all dwarves speak in a Scottish accent or Russian accent. I feel like those are used heavily for those ancestries, for those kind of people. So when I put this dwarf together, I was like, I need some other gruff voice. Like, so I went through a few in my head, like of ones I could come up with. And I was like, oh, you know who this guy's got to be? He's got to be Randy Macho Man Savage. One, I can actually kind of do the voice. And two, I was like, nobody uses Macho Man's voice for anything. So like, it'll be
that's
unique.
True.
It'll be memorable. it fits his personality because he's this old gruff dwarf who's lost the use of his legs, and he's kind of disgruntled about that a little bit. So you know, the Macho Man voice just seemed like it fit well.
Yeah, I don't know that I would have popped into that voice personally, but it is nice. It fits, and it does convey a lot immediately. Like, I think that's one of the things I really like about voices. We've talked about this before, but I think that when somebody hits you with a character voice, it's like you instantly know a little something about that character. There are clues into their personality traits, into their behavior, their emotional tone, I guess. Like, all that stuff comes through like instantly. Like, you don't really have to do much else besides just utter a few words in a voice, and somebody immediately knows what's going on. And
yeah, I mean,
that's cool.
and you have to do it. Like, when you read a book, you don't think about it, but you apply a voice to what you're reading in your head. And then if you listen to one like on an audiobook, you're going to get that back again because someone else has done that work for you. So if you read a book and then listen to an audiobook and the voices are different, it messes with you because that's not the voice you've put to it for however long you've been reading or whatever. Then you go back and listen to like the next book or something on audio, and it sounds different, and you have to readjust.
Yes, Celestia Shepherd, that is correct. So a Homer Simpson voice would let people know that the character is not very smart, for Homer Simpson, that is, and also maybe somewhat goofy. Yes, I totally agree with that.
Yeah, you could definitely, the Homer voice would definitely lead you to at least think that a character is not intelligent.
Yeah,
I mean, I know we've done some pretty dumb characters in our past that our viewers don't know anything about. Like, Levi is infamous for Gundar.
Yep.
And I mean, you know, we could easily slip into the Gundar voice. Oh, Gundar likes to hit things hard.
Yeah, which is basically the Happy Gilmore swinger.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, Homer is, you know, that's a pretty good voice. You know, it's a good character in general, though. Like, definitely not who you want running your nuclear facility, but that's he's got a lot going for him. Can you do a Homer voice?
You know, Homer, there's been two different Homers. So
I don't remember that.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure they switched Homers at one point, and so the voice got slightly different. So I'm kind of an old school Simpson. So, oh, Marge, I can't quite do it. I can't quite make my voice do it.
I mean, I think anyone could do that. Go, you know, like that one pretty much goes right to it. Spider Pig, doing the things that only Spider Pig does.
It's like I have to listen to it first.
I do need to hear it.
I have to pull it up here so I can hear it. Then maybe I could try it.
I would love if I could sample sounds right now without screwing up the entire stream. But
that's for sure.
That is the hard part.
I don't know if I got a Homer. I don't know if I can do it or not. But
well, it's like there's something to his voice that is in the back of the throat a little bit. So it's like high pitched and in your nose, but then there's some sound in the back of your throat that kind of closes it off. So it's like you got the like this part of it, like the hello, you know, like this real high pitched kind of squeakiness. Yeah, that's right. That's what we're going to be going for here tonight.
Yeah, thanks, Celestia. That's exactly what we're going to be doing here tonight. Is a lot of bad attempts because I'm not as talented a voice actor as like Levi is. Like he knows
Levi's
all the mechanics to make a certain voice a certain way, and I just give it my best shot. That's what I go for.
We need a line, I think, is what we determined last time. Is once we had lines, it started like really just banging out there. Let's see. Oh God, I love Lindy. We should try the French accent.
Now I could do the Monty Python French accent, which I don't know if that counts as a French accent.
Go for it.
I shall taunt you a second time. You English key nigget. I fired in your general direction. Which you're going to get at some point in this Y-hander game, Lindy, because I have to at some point bring Ravit's father in. He's got to be French because you're French. So I gotta work up on it a little bit before we get to that point in the story where he appears, because I will have to try it at some point.
Yeah, I mean, a lot of it's just going to be like making sounds until something actually works. So like the first like multiple things I'll say will not sound at all like a voice I'm trying to do, and then I'll try to dial it in. And that's usually how I roll. But so like with the French one, it's a lot of like kind of smooth sounds, right? So you got like the, well, hello there, you know, like this like kind of legato kind of tone to it. Yeah. And I don't know what just happened.
Goes if I try it long enough. I have to work really hard not to, but I end up at Pepe Le Pew. That's where I end up if I try it.
Hey, Air Laser, welcome.
I played. You weren't in it, but the one shot we did for Chateau on Zweihander RPG, I played a French character, Jacques, and Jacques he would talk a lot like this, and he would say things a lot like, "Are you sure this is what you want to do?" And then at some point or another, he'd be like, "This is where we go," and it was, it was I kind of a Frenchy accent to it, but I'm not as good as some people are at talking in that sort of way.
Well, if it's a lot of talking about is this the art or the practice of excellence, you just say things very fluidly, and I think it becomes very much more the French.
The Hamilton take on Lafayette. That's a good one. See,
I have no idea.
These are people with actual talents. That's good
That's people with actual talents. I have not seen Hamilton. I know it was on earlier in last week or something like that.
They just put on Disney Plus last week. My wife and my son. My son is a huge Hamilton fan. He can sing all the songs, and he's big into Broadway anyway. He went and saw it. Him and Tara did. So it was,
Yeah, Laugh Love Lindy, you've got the accent figured out. That is,
her accent is fantastic. So.
Quite excellent. I think she was saying she does some research on that in the chat there, and it goes a long way. If you actually spend the time looking up the videos of how people pronounce things, like when certain letters get dropped, all that kind of stuff, I think it's pretty interesting how effective that is. I've only done that kind of level of research one time for a character, and it definitely paid off for me.
Which one was that?
It was Oleg from LARP. So Oleg was a Russian character, which at this point it's been 4 or 5 years since we did that. So I've completely lost it. But
oh man, it's been 10 years since Oleg. I hate to break it to you, Jeff.
What?
I've lived in Paris for 10 years, and you did Oleg before I moved to Paris. So
okay. Well, that's why I don't remember it. Yeah, it's been a very long time. But that one, I spent a lot of time watching videos. Listening to actual voice coaches on how people speak, and there were regional differences and stuff like there are in the United States, and it was really cool. There were certain letters that just sounded different, but then there was also cadence to it, and all the rest of it. So I did that, and I watched a lot of Eastern Promises, that movie with Viggo Mortensen in it.
Earlier was saying if she does a French accent, she hits Quebec because they have, they speak French up there. She's Canadian, so that makes sense that you would hit more Quebec than France French.
Let's see, Laugh Love Lindy, you said you were going to play a French accent for a podcast and didn't want to make a lot of people mad, so studied up. I think that's one that you have to be careful with, because of all the peoples on the planet to get upset when you do their voice wrong, it's probably the French. I can't imagine really nailing that one without a lot of practice.
So you got a Pathfinder game coming up in 2 days, Jeff, and
I do.
This is going to be our first real game session,
and
so you don't really have anything for Hobgoblin lined up yet. You're using a voice mod for. And what is a voice mod for a little girl? Yeah,
the little girl voice is a voice mod, so I'm going to use that. The father of that game is no voice mod. The Hobgoblins, I think I'm going to play it more by individuals, like you were talking about before. They're all going to have kind of a militant vibe to them. Well, not all of them. Most of them will. So there's going to be kind of a more of severeness to their tone and kind of a little bit of arrogance to it.
You going for Full Metal Jacket Drill Sergeant?
No, not that far. That's a little excessive. No, I'm thinking more of the Lannisters in Game of Thrones. So more of that or what is this guy's name?
Tyrion?
Not Tyrion, but the dad and I can't remember his name now.
Tywin.
Yes, thank you, Tywin. So more kind of like Tywin or the brother of who's the contender who was working with the Red Witch? I can't remember her name either.
Stannis.
Baratheon. So more like those two tones, kind of that severe, kind of less nonsense kind of individuals. So I think that's going to be the tone I'm going to go with. Yeah, so I'm going to try to take them a little bit more sophisticated but real to the point, you know. So like I think those are the traits I kind of want to like push out there. So like there's gonna be some layer of like them being reserved, I think, since there's so much at play in their culture in terms of vying for power and that kind of stuff. And so, go ahead.
So are you doing anything for Githyanki then? Because you got the Githyanki also invading. So
yeah,
are they going to speak any?
They might. See, this is tricky because I don't know how much I want to give away at this point. But at least initially in the game, I don't intend for the Githyanki to be a primary mover or taker in the talking sense. They're more of a threat. But I view them as more of like space pirates. So
yeah, are they going to be like alien? Are they going to speak like in some alien tongue of that we're just not going to understand? Yeah.
So like if for those of you guys who don't know what a Githyanki is, they're part of like the astral realm. Essentially, they have kind of this weird relationship with other denizens of the astral world. And they're very heavily psionically inspired. So a lot of them do have like telepathy and stuff. So we're going to be playing around in those kind of areas. So they probably won't talk a ton. When they do speak, it's probably going to be telepathically, which kind of already kind of augments, you know, a voice in my mind. You know, like there's always kind of like that weird kind of echoey vibe to it, I think, that belongs when you're thinking of telepathy. But they're also kind of what I think they're mostly like undercommon or deep speech kind of stuff, you know, because they're these outsiders. Oh, it looks like we got a redemption of some sort here.
We did. Air Laser's on it. She wants our best Midwestern accent, which I already have a little bit of a Midwestern draw as it is. So
just the Midwestern, like Midwestern, or are you talking about a little bit of twanginess?
Because I think they want a little twangy, which is actually kind of a little more Western, like
it could be a little more South. Western. Yeah,
a little more South, a little more Western.
All right. Well, I think she's talking about the character I'm doing for the Monster of the Week game over there. His name is Dale, and he's real sick and tired of all the nonsense that's been going on. He continuously finds himself, abducted by aliens, dealing with vampires. And just a couple weeks ago, he crashed into this angel with his car. It's just a bunch of nonsense. Everywhere I go, nothing at all. Oh, that's Southern, okay. You want Minnesota?
Oh well, Minnesota is a whole different thing. That's South Canada. That's not Midwest. That's.
Oh man, yeah. I mean, we could do it at that voice too. I mean, that one's not too hard. You got a Minnesota voice, right?
Who, me?
Yeah.
Oh man, I don't know.
Still a little Fargo thing.
Yeah, Minnesota is the Midwest technically, but like we live in the Midwest in Illinois, and Minnesota does not sound like us at all. It's like saying like you could do a Northeast accent, and someone starts speaking like from the Northeast, like, no, I meant Boston, and you're like, oh, that's a whole different thing.
Yeah, Boston's a very specific one. There's a lot of voices you're going to discover we just can't do. We're not talented.
Not like that. I'm trying to think of a Minnesota accent because what I do is I end up flipping to Canadian and I start talking like something for Letterkenny, which isn't right. And
it's not too far off. You know, I mean, what do we got here? Daniel Craig's Smooth English Spy, or maybe Ralph Fiennes. Okay. Daniel Craig. Let's see. Well, let's see. How's that sound start? So I'm going to make a bunch of sounds that come out of their mouth, like, it's somewhere back here. It's like you're sucking your back teeth. I think.
Sean Connery. There.
I did.
That was Wolford voice. That was Sean Connery. I mean, don't get me wrong. That's an English spy because he was also James Bond. So it's hard to go for spy and not land on Bond.
Yeah.
Bond. I don't think therapist for 100.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, Sean Connery is an iconic voice. It just kind of happens. But the buttery smoothness of a Daniel Craig. This is,
I never considered Daniel Craig's voice to be that distinguishable.
No, it's not really. It doesn't come to mind anyway. But Yeah, Air Laser, that's right. Sean Connery is just fuck you, Trebek for me. Yeah.
I know. There was so much, if you grew up in our era, there was so much of the Celebrity Jeopardy spoofs that they did with like Burt Reynolds and Sean Connery that I cannot do a Sean Connery voice without wanting to slip into one of those lines from Celebrity Jeopardy.
Oh, for sure. Well, I mean, you guys are right. Okay, so posh British, I guess, is basically what you do. So if I start to talk a little bit like this, you know, very clear, very dictated, very well enunciated. That's a little high, kind of nasally. I think that's how this sounds. Or, okay, so like your LO love. Yeah.
How you doing
love.
today, mate? I sound more Australian than I do.
Well, as soon as you say mate, that's pretty much you're done for at that point, right?
You've jumped an entire continent the moment you hit there. I have a cousin who lives in London and has for like 10 years. And the last time he came home, he definitely had more of a British accent. And it was interesting because, like, but, you know, and he uses a lot of different words because of it. So I think, like I said, some of his vocabulary, like if you're going to sound like somebody from, you have to know the vocabulary. Like he was talking about having a flatmate.
Yeah, flatmate is the one that
it's a flatmate, and he's like, "Oh, it's a roommate." They don't call them; they call them flats, not apartments. You're like, "Oh, okay." So like, there's like a whole different vocabulary that you have to have in order to make it sound right.
Well, there's a bunch of words that do have double meanings like that. So like that is an important part of voice acting, I guess, is really slipping into the style of language. But like, yeah, knackered is a good one there. Laugh, love, Wendy. Taking the piss is an interesting phrase that like, I had no idea what that meant. And so like the first few times I heard it, I was like, okay, you got to go, you know, go relieve yourself at the bathroom. Cool. Like, I don't know what you're telling us at all excitedly about that, but do your thing, I guess. But it turns out taking the piss is like getting drunk. Or, you know, making a joke or something, like making light of something. So, like, that one's kind of interesting. Or when they say, like, that's mental, like, that's not something we say here, but it's essentially the same thing. You know, it's like, that's crazy or something.
Right. Well, you hear, around here, you hear people say, "Are you mental?" So, I guess it's kind of used here in the States, but no, there's definitely a vocabulary that you have to have to make it sound right. Like you could say anything trying to use that accent, but you're not gonna get there.
Yeah, and yes, that's another one there, Air Laser. It's lots of adding R's to things. Now, I don't know if that's a British thing. That's something my dad does, and it seems to be also like a Southern thing. Like Washington is one of the things he says.
Yeah, that's a Midwest thing.
I don't know where the R comes from. But like that's another thing.
You wash your car because you got to head on down there to the 7-Eleven. We're going to wash her a couple times.
Yeah, so it's like R's. Right. I think it's dropping letters. I'm trying to think of an example of that though. That was a big one in the Russian accent, but I can't remember what the parts were that were missing. It was like a certain set of letters were just not there. And so, like, you just ignore them. Or actually, in the Cockney accent style thing, you just drop off, like, halves of words. Yeah.
So, yeah. Now, you know when I do my best Cockney accent? Is after I've watched a few episodes of Peaky Blinders. Oh, man. You watch the Peaky Blinders, you'll be talking to Cockney for, like, 2 straight days, not even meaning to. Not like binge a whole season in, like, a day. And then it takes, like, a day for me to get it out of my system. Like,
got an example?
Oh man, see, I haven't watched it. But you know what? It's almost like what Clint's done with like writing. Like he uses a Cockney accent, so like you can kind of try to slip into it a little bit. But you know, it's just how it goes. You gotta really get down in there sometimes and think about it a bit before you get to it. But that's how it just you know, Tommy, you can't just be that way all the time. So you know, we kind of slip into it a little like that sometimes. But
I've never heard that phrase, Air Laser. We're gone rubble is what it is.
We're gone rubble.
We are in Barney? What the hell does that mean?
Barney Rubble? That has... Barney Rubble was in trouble?
I guess so. That's interesting. Like, I don't know if that's where it comes from, but, like, slang is crazy. Like, when you start to really break it down, it's like a meme that goes in, like, multiple layers deep. Like, if you're part of the culture, it all makes sense, but as soon as you're removed from that culture, all of a sudden, everything is just weird. Cockney rhyming slang? I don't know. Give us some examples here if you know some.
I don't know if I know any of those.
I know there's just a lot of really whimsical, strange sounding things that come out of their mouth, but I've I'm not particularly well versed in that. I'll tell you that.
Barmy. I'm not. No.
So it was trouble rhymes with rubble, Barney rubble. We're in Barn. Okay, so that's what you're talking about. Okay.
Okay.
So just words just sound like other words, so that's what they're using as their slang. I can't think of any examples. Like, do we do that at all here in the States? Do you think of any examples of that?
Not that I can think of. I mean, I know that people use rhymes for things like, be like, get here, you're in trouble here on the double. Like they'll do things like that, but they don't substitute a word just because it sounds similar.
Okay, so let's see. What's your example of your time of gifts? Most obvious Cockney rhyming slang is trouble and strife is what? Oh my god. Is it specifically the phrase trouble and strife equals wife, or is it like the concepts of trouble or the concept of strife? And do they use the word wife to stand in for those, or is it the opposite way? Oh, okay, so China plate is your mate? Brown bread is dead? Oh, wow, okay. I would have never picked up these things. That's very strange.
That's interesting.
This is like going down the rabbit hole of like Urban Dictionary or something here, but it's Cockney edition.
Yeah, like I said, we've gotten into like a whole level of vocabulary that I didn't study for.
So they're actually using longer phrasing in their slang, because I always thought the slang was something to shorten information down.
I think in America and in the Midwest it's true. But I guess that's not necessarily the case everywhere else.
That's weird. I do think it's really interesting when you look at linguistics in a culture. You could see just what things they find important, by how many words they have for a thing. And if you go through like any culture, like back in time, there's lots of words for eating and food. There's lots of words for getting drunk, and there's lots of words for inappropriate things. There's lots of ways to say curse words.
Yeah, that's for sure.
And it's like the universal thing across cultures. It's like, let's find like millions of ways to say really offensive things.
Sometimes that's very true. We here in the Midwest, they do a lot of like half words. Mm-hmm. You see some of the comedians that made fun of, like usins, y'all. There's a lot of running two words into one to get, and I don't know why, because Midwest people, like, we're like the least in a hurry of anyone you'll ever meet. But the way that sometimes people around here speak, you would think we were in a hurry.
Or not in a hurry.
Because
you'll say y'all. You don't say y'all. They let that really go. What the lazy part of it is I think with that accent, is that you don't move your mouth or your lips. So a lot of that.
You think it's from a history of chewing tobacco?
I do. I think specifically chewing tobacco is a cause for a lot of things.
Between smoking and chewing tobacco, you think that's got a lot to do with it?
Yeah, because I think as soon as you got your pouch of crap in your mouth right here, you start to sound a little like this. It's just immediately, like, there's no chance you can go around this one. It's just what happens.
Yeah, no, you're on it. That's got to be what it is. You just stuff your tongue over a part of your cheek and try to talk, and you immediately talk like a Midwesterner. That's just got to be what it is. Especially in the rural part of the Midwest.
Mm-hmm. And I kind of wonder if British is just not letting your teeth open.
Well, if you could try that and see if it sounds correct. I think you might be onto something.
So it's like if you just keep your jaw clenched and your teeth very close together. Though I think my lips are moving a little bit more than a British person. But that seems to be exactly what causes that. It's really weird. We're on to something here. We figured it out.
I think maybe you cracked that one. That's a good
tight jaw, loose jaw. So yeah, I think as soon as I loosen my jaw and just let it kind of flap around, it does this. Kind of slips a little bit more Texan, I guess, at that point. Like it's edging over in that area.
Nice.
That's weird. But yeah, I think there is a lot to that, like chewing tobacco, or like habits that people have and where they're from. So like that's something you can use in your games too. If you got like a culture in your game where there's certain behaviors that they have or certain attitudes, maybe that can probably bleed into how their voice should sound to some degree. or like what their voice or their language kind of develop into a little bit. Because there's a lot of that, like the contractions thing for the South, the slow speaking pattern from the South, as opposed to the East Coast being really fast and tight. Let's see.
Yeah, there's a lot of different African accents too. Like, what happens now is the one that you get stuck in your head is the
Wakanda
one they use
forever.
for Wakanda.
Yeah.
Whatever version of accent that's supposed to be, that's the one that gets stuck in your head now, because you watch one movie with Black Panther in it, and that's where you're at.
Yeah, that's true. It's examples, right? So like this came up in school at one point. We were talking about for most people, like in these classes, they're from like big cities, so their first experiences with different cultures was just like somebody down the street. But like where we grew up, probably like my first example of like an Indian person, unfortunately, was on The Simpsons, right? So like that stereotype character is like the first Indian person I knew of, or thought of, and it's a dumb character that, just embodies a lot of traits that aren't true. So like there's probably a lot of those things going on too, where, the amount of information you have, like so the cultural elements that you picked up through your media and stuff, or actual interaction in life, really sculpts what you think this person's supposed to sound like from that area. Oh.
Yeah, and again, that's where I think I'm trying to get away from that when I'm voicing my characters in Zweihander. So the good thing about Zweihander, from a mechanics level, is that they've gone away from races and gone to ancestries, and the way that you build characters, like, you get an ancestral trait, and that's about it. And it kind of, re-emphasizes that not every dwarf is going to be the same, and not every elf is going to be the same. So, at best, you can take like a region and decide they all have the same accent if you want to. But I'm going back to focusing just on individuals, so that I don't have to. And also, it's in a way maybe lazy, because then I don't have to try to match it from dwarf to dwarf to dwarf or anything like that.
Well, there's that. Yeah,
I can slip in and out of them with each individual NPC as I need to.
All right, so the chat is on to something here in the chat that's pretty interesting. So earlier, Quail was saying that the U.S. uses a lot of colloquialisms, and that's definitely true, especially if you try to start talking to somebody who's English second language. They do not understand all the random crap we're talking about, and I can't explain the crap we're talking about, because when you start breaking it down, it doesn't make any sense. But the other thing you guys are talking about is different words for the same thing being variant based on the region. And so like the one that they're talking about right now is what you call a fizzy sugared beverage. Now, where we grew up, we're in a weird spot where there were 3 different words for it simultaneously. Though I have... I'm trying to think of what we used
I've always
to say.
landed on pop.
Pop? See,
Yeah, we used
for a
pop
long
here.
time it was Coke.
Now, see, Coke is a specific kind of pop. Like, it's
Yes.
a brand name. So I don't
The
call
problem
things
was-
by a brand name, because if I'm having anything otherwise, it's still a pop. Like, it's...
Yeah, I think we used to call it pop in our hometown. But what I noticed is in southern Indiana, where my dad's family's from, it was always Coke. So whenever I was visiting my cousins and stuff, hey, you want a Coke? Sure. What flavor? You want a Sprite? You want a 7-Up? I'm like, wait, what? So apparently, like, it's interesting because like that particular brand of drink had so dominated the media at that point, I guess, in those areas, that was just what you called it. Didn't matter what you were talking about. Didn't matter if it was a cola or a root beer or something else.
Right. Yeah, no, there are a lot of people who do that, and I totally get that. It just, for me, it's just always been pop. So
I'm trying to see what everyone else is saying it is. So like, looks like Animal G's from the East Coast, so it's soda there, obviously. So anywhere where you're far enough north, it becomes soda, I think. I'm trying to remember like where all the regions are cut off, because it is a north-south thing, I think.
And a west. I think when you go west, it flips at one point when you go west also.
Now I do know, like in like Appalachia and stuff like that, swings pretty hard towards the coke and pop kind of side of things.
There's maps out there you can find that chart all of it. I mean,
yeah, it's pretty interesting. It's like there's that one. See, time of gifts. What are you saying? The standard German lemonade is dyed lemonade.
I saw one the other day too. It was, do you call them lightning bugs or fireflies?
There it is. Yeah.
It was like, which one was it? Around here, they're lightning bugs. Like,
all right, so let's poll the chat here. So the blinking light up insects that are outside at night, what are they called?
Animal G says fireflies.
Yeah, so we got a firefly. Let's see what everyone else says. For us, it was always lightning bugs.
Yeah, there's still lightning bugs around here. That's what they call them.
Like, firefly sounds too sophisticated. Like, it almost sounds like a technical term to me. So Soulstorm is saying lightning bug. We've got air lasers, firefly.
Animal G, air laser, and Wop Wop say fireflies. So while we're talking about this, is there any kind of in-game terms where this could be a thing? Like, there's a lot.
I think there should be.
There's a lot of different terminology, and actually, I know for Zweihander, I hadn't thought about doing this, but I could do this because though it's weird. They gave them different stat variations, even though you would think of them as the same weapon. So there is Greatsword, Zweihander, and Two-Handed Sword are all three different options in Zweihander, and they all act with their traits just ever so different, just ever so slightly. But if you were in a standard D&D campaign like Pathfinder, where those weapons are all going to be one and the same, you could refer to a great sword or a two-handed sword differently based on region if you wanted to apply that to your game. And I had never thought about doing something like that. But
well, I mean, you can always do that. Regionally, you can change what the items are called. But like historically and in the world, like all those swords had different uses, different techniques. They all had different trade-offs, you know. So like, yes, in the broadest sense, they're all two-handed sword, but they don't function the same way. And
well, but there's a difference between saying like that an Odachi and a Claymore are both two-handed swords, but they're very different. I'm not so positive the other three were ever that different. Like a falchion is definitely different.
Well, sure, that's very different, yeah.
But just a two-handed sword is, I mean, Zweihander literally is two-hander. So it's literally just the French way of, or the German way of saying two-handed sword. So like you could literally do that if you wanted to, and it would. I'm not positive you're really talking about a different weapon.
Trying to see what they're talking about here. You have a Zweihander in the closet? Awesome.
Are they? Yeah, I mean, what makes it different? I'm curious what the difference is. Like, if you were to see one and it wasn't labeled, how would you differentiate a great sword from a Zweihander?
Well, she's going to give you an answer here, but I'm pretty sure it's the shape, like the width versus length, the ratio of the hilt to the actual blade, like where the grooves are on the actual weapon itself. Like
it's a hilt shape or blade shape. The hilts as well, both.
Probably both. I mean, it's there's a lot of technology at play there. Like if you start looking back historically at some of these, evolutions of weaponry, there's like little minor things that, like, when you look at it on the surface, you don't really notice too much of a difference between one weapon or another, but they have a huge effect on the battlefield as far as how they interact with armor or other weapons. You know, so like I imagine there's probably quite a few differences. And yeah, Zweihander is very different from a longsword too. Yeah, I mean, I think we're kind of tainted in our D&D world of thinking a longsword is kind of a stubby, short sword. But in reality, longswords are freaking massive. Like
they're yeah. I think the key with what makes a longsword is that it's one-handed only.
Well,
because you get the bastard
D&D
sword,
terms.
1.5 hand. Because then you roll into bastard sword and then you up to great sword when you're a full two-handed. A bastard sword being one that can be hand and a half sword, as they sometimes call it.
Yeah. Hey, Game Master's Vault, welcome.
Hey, Game Master's Vault.
Yeah, when you actually see a real longsword in person, it gets a little crazy. It's way longer than you expect it to be, at least for me. Like Go ahead.
I was going to say, Cloud Sword is actually, I wouldn't consider Cloud Sword a broadsword.
It's also not a real sword. Like, there's
It's
no
like
way you can use that
a
weapon.
building on a stick, but it's.
I mean, if like, have you guys ever watched those videos where there's like blacksmiths that make some iconic, video game weapons in real life with real materials? Like, I watched somebody make the Buster's sword and actually try to use it. It's freaking amazingly hilarious. Like, he like literally is just like barely able to pick it up, and then like he just drops it and it just explodes his tree trunk in half. So it's like there's just a lot of force, but basically just chunks into it. There's no swinging that thing. There's no like using it effectively. There's definitely no like victory dance over your head kind of scenario. That's just not happening.
So we've kind of steered away a bit here from where we've gotten to. So we were talking about vocabularies and multiple words for the same sort of thing. So are there any other? Do you have anything else for Pathfinder that you're going to do anything of that sort? Are there items where you're going to put in regional dialect, or is it?
Well, I hadn't thought about it until we were talking about it now, but now I want to. I think it is interesting when you're working with a particular culture, making it distinct from other cultures. Now, I know we just went through a whole thing talking about ancestries not being, definitively this group is this thing or that thing. But I do think culture within a small group is something where you could find those commonalities. So, like, just because you're a dwarf doesn't make you the same as all other dwarves. But if you're a dwarf from a particular city in a particular neighborhood, you're probably going to have some things in common with the other ones in that area, right? So I think it is interesting to kind of pick up some of these language things. So maybe we should brainstorm a little bit with the crowd to figure out what words we think would be important. Like, I know for the hobgoblins in my world, they're going to be very into excellency, warfare, conflict as a virtue, discipline, that kind of stuff. So, like, there's probably a lot of words that kind of fill in that area.
Now we got to redeem here from Air Laser. Said, what accent would you guys do for a dwarf, especially if you're trying to steer away from the stereotypic Scottish? And I actually answered that at the beginning of the show, Air Laser, but I'll do it again for you. For a dwarf in my Zweihander game, and if you watch my Zweihander game, you've heard me do it, so I'm going to do it again for you. I didn't want to use the Scottish or Russian accent for dwarf because, well, one, that's what Levi uses in our Everstorm game. So if for no other reason, just to differentiate my world from Lim World that Levi does, I wanted to do a different voice. So I went through kind of a list of voices of things I could think of, and I came up with Randy Macho Man Savage for that one dwarf. Now everyone likes to do Scottish and Russian, but I decided that perhaps you'd have to do something a little more like this, brother. Oh, yeah. And so my dwarf, he gets real angry sometimes, and he talks a lot about when he got the losses of his legs, and he can't use them anymore, so he's stuck in this wheelchair.
Yes. Snap into a Slim Jim. Yeah,
Slim Jim, brother.
Yeah, I feel like even if you do get away from those regional type things like Scottish or Russian or whatever, I think that there is still the need to kind of have an earthy, kind of gravelly, immovable element to your voice, like some of the stereotypes that are evoked by dwarf, right?
Now, Air Laser's asked another question. It says, Dusty, do you think you'll try a full voice accent again for a campaign? Your character for the module was hilarious. It made you talk about my Mike Tyson.
Oh, yeah.
So, basically, I did Mike Tyson because I was an orc fighter, and he was the greatest fighter ever lived. And I listened to a whole lot of Mike Tyson interviews and a whole lot of Mike Tyson post-fight speeches, and he talks about how he wanted to beat people up and everything. So I listened to a lot before I really got it down. And to answer your question, yes, I am. I'm doing a voice for Vagabond and Pathfinder going forward. So it's a different voice. It's not the clashiest voice, but it was definitely... he definitely has a voice for when he does speak.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, we didn't get to hear a ton of speaking from him, but I'm hoping we'll get a little bit more of that. So Soulstorm, your question is interesting. So you're saying, is there a way you would recommend to do an opposite sex voice without being too obvious, like girls just talking really low and guys just talking really high? How do you move away from that? Well, that's a good question that I don't have a good answer on because my voice is particular. Now, Levi does a pretty good job of it. I don't really understand how he does it, but I have found a way to cheat if you're using a computer, and I'm going to see if it works here. So let me pull this up. So I've got this Voice Mod Pro, and it's got a couple male to female and female to male options. Now, the first one I'm going to do sounds like absolute shit. So let me just get this one busted out for you.
Yeah, you're
I
right.
do
So
not
start
like
with
this.
cheating.
This one sucks. One doesn't sound like a woman at all. Right?
This one, I think, something about it.
We're only partially picking you up, Jeff. We're not hearing much.
Okay, so I think if I get closer to the mic, that sounding more like a woman on this one than the previous one.
I'm hearing it, but it's not. I don't know what you're doing with that one. What's that one supposed to be?
Well, supposedly that's my man to woman 2. That's what that is.
Okay, well, I mean, yeah, sure.
This first one I don't remember liking, so let me try this one again.
So if I get up in here, this is man to woman number 1. I think it's if I remember correctly, this one is the one that sounds like.
I don't know. Like, I can't remember which one sounds like what, and I can't hear it right now without screwing up the stream. So, but this Voice Mod Pro has some interesting things to it. I think if you're not using a voice modulator like that, I think it's just in like the way you use your language.
Yes, like Phineas and Ferb. That's where that just landed. Air Laser nailed it. They said cartoon, and I was about to agree with Soulstorm, and then Air Laser just nailed it. Phineas and Ferb. Like that is exactly where that voice put you, Jeff, on that modulator.
Okay. I'll have to look those up.
Why don't you use it again and just say, "Hey Ferb, what do you want to do today?" And it'll be perfect.
Hey Ferb, what do you want to do today?
Oh yeah, that's it. Nailed it. That's exactly what it is.
Okay. All right. But this thing's got a lot of cool options.
Doesn't watch enough kids' cartoons apparently to know what we're talking about, but it's Phineas and Ferb, by the way, one of my favorite kids' cartoons. If you ever have to watch a cartoon, if you ever have kids and you're like, man, my kid, like, I have to watch cartoons with my kid. I want something that's not completely unbearable. Phineas and Ferb is where it's at. It's a great show.
Huh. Yeah, so I mean, I guess for the male to female and female to male, I don't know. I sometimes just bring my voice up like this, so it's way head voicey, and that seems to be one way to do a woman's voice. I don't really have good women voices, unfortunately. I think it is more of just like where you place your voice. So like for women, I try to push my voice up into my head. And for a male voice, I imagine you just have to drop your voice into your throat. So like you're producing it down. Think of it, you're producing your words from your up above your chest here.
That I think what happens is people, when they hear a voice, when they think of male or female voice, they have a tendency to think either lower or higher. And I think what Soulstorm was asking is there a way to do it where you don't
do that?
Change that. And I think for me, like, I have a NPC who was a PC that may show up in Horror in Huttenberg. And I actually spent the day on my walk thinking about if I could duplicate the voice that PC used for that character. Now, the player was female, and her character was a female ogre. So I've had to think about if I could reproduce that voice, and I'm not positive if I can, but it has put me to that point because that voice was not a higher voice because it was an ogre. So just because
there is some quality,
there is a quality there I have to try to maintain. So I don't know if I can do the player doing that voice, but if it comes to a point that NPC makes an appearance, I'll have to give it a try. And I don't know if I have the answer to that, Soulstorm, because I don't know if I can do it myself, but I'm going to give it a shot if the scene comes to the point in the plot where that has to happen. So
Yeah, that is interesting because you guys are right. There are women who have lower voices, but it's still distinctly a feminine voice, and I don't know what the quality is there that we're identifying. Obviously, we're really good at identifying it. Like we're evolved to figure these things out really well. But I don't know. Let's see. See where are the other questions before they shift off here. Soulstorm wanted to know how we would do.
That I thought we should answer. That was up. It got pushed up there pretty quickly though.
Okay.
It says, how do you all match voices to character concepts? Do you personally jump to the opposites, thinking like Dainty Dwarf or Early Elf?
Do I jump to opposites? No. I don't know. I think there is a value in breaking trope, but I also think there's a value in playing trope. It just depends on what the culture is of your table at the moment. So like if it's been steady as you go, always tropey, okay, break trope here and there, that's good. But I think if everyone's always the exception, it just kind of muddies things up to the point where it's not interesting anymore. So like at that point, I would go back to trope. But in terms of like picking characteristics that kind of go along with a character's voice, that's something we were talking about earlier with the Hobgoblin idea, is that like there are certain personality elements that come out in a voice. The types of words you pick, the cadence of how you speak, changes, like where you're putting your emphasis on things. Suddenly you're a different person. Your personality comes out.
You got a little Ian McDermott there. That was a little Palpatine-ish going on.
Oh yeah, okay.
That was I just caught some Palpatine there when you said that.
That's very interesting. I don't think it was there, but
that you missed it that time, but you hit it the first time.
See, these are like little flashes. Like if you got to record these things and like remember what it felt like to make a sound. But I think for me, it has a lot to do with. I think of what that character is presenting. Like, are they a high-strung character? Okay, well then their phrasing needs to be tight and quick, and it needs to be like ready to jump onto somebody else's words really quickly. Or are they really laid back like a Southerner? Okay, now I'm going to let my voice kind of really go slow here. I'm going to take my time, not worry about it too much.
I know for me, with Vagabond, the first thing I thought of is that he wears a mask. So his voice has to have some level of muffle to it.
Mm-hmm.
So I started thinking of like masked voices I could go for. And of course, the first one that comes to mind that everyone thinks of when you have a masked voice is Bane. And I was not going to do Bane.
Yeah.
Like I'm not suggesting I can't do Bane, but I wasn't going to do Bane. So the second one that came to mind, the one that I kind of stuck a little more with, and I almost don't even want to say what I'm shooting for, because then when you hear me do it on Wednesday, you'll recognize it. But I'll shoot for Kylo Ren.
Huh. Okay.
So he uses a voice modulator, which I don't use, but I get close enough to it that I don't need the voice modulator in order to speak the way that he does. I do not have to have a voice modulator.
Oh.
But at the end, everything will be okay. Just turn off the dark side. I still feel the light calling me.
Nice. Yep, that'll do it.
Because I wanted something that was masked. So I shot for something I thought I could do. So
that's nice. I like that. We got a lot of chat going on. This is great.
Like I said with Bowron, he doesn't really have a voice. It's just a matter of word usage, and he's just kind of an asshole pirate. So I just shoot to be as abrasive as possible, and
as dickish as you can be.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's not so much a voice though. I mean, maybe a little airier than my normal voice, but it isn't much.
It's a little bit. It's not a ton, yeah. Yeah, I think there's an earlier comment here. I'm trying to keep up while we're talking, but Game Master's Vault was saying that there's a great video on YouTube with Taliesin Jaffe from Critical Role fame and Satine Phoenix, who we've talked to on here. It's pretty awesome. And that they do a whole voice acting thing, and they were talking about using the 7 dwarves method of RPG voices. So just pick one of the 7 dwarves, male or female sound, low, mid, or high tone, and then you're good to go. That's interesting. So, like, I guess if you had, like, your, this dopey voice, and you can kind of go with that real quick. I don't know. It's interesting. Yeah, so like we got those. Let's see, Little Cup of Joe on Twitch also has a low voice and does some voice acting if y'all want to need. Okay, so that's good to know. Laugh Love Lindy. That might give us some hope of how to do a better voice on there. Hey, Featherfall.
Oh, Featherfall. Rating with a
Welcome.
party of 9. Welcome, viewers from Featherfall Tabletop.
Yeah, we're doing a kind of a dive on to what's going on with our voices, what kind of goes into selecting language, what cultural components kind of play into things, and so we're kind of all over the place. But we've been talking about regional dialects. We've been talking about right now predominantly how you select a voice for your character, how you express certain behaviors and things. So we're kind of on that kick right now. We're kind of figured out as we kind of play. So we were just talking a little bit about when we're picking character voices, do we allow? Is it just a tone thing, or are there cadence things that are different? So, like I was saying, kind of some tricks I use would be, speak faster or slower, chop up your words, speak, small words, big words. Flow more, be more abrasive, that kind of stuff. Quail, you said you try to sing in Frank Sinatra's own, but don't talk like anything like him? Huh. Well, I imagine people's speaking voices and their singing voices are very different, right? Like, I think it would be pretty odd if your voices were the same. I can't really think of a lot of people whose voices are the same in both those realms.
Yeah, I think that's somewhat true. But if you're talking about somebody that you hear singing more often than you hear them regular talking, like their normal speech, if you want to sound like that voice, you have to go for the singing voice.
So we got that. I think when you do a singing voice, because you are creating some kind of performance at that point, right? So there's your pitch shifting, obviously, you're tonally shifting. There's musical elements to it that most people don't sound musical when they talk, right? Like, even if you kind of have a sing-songy voice a little bit, that's not super obvious, right? Like when I'm talking back and forth to you, like I don't hear a song, or like a musical kind of thing going on.
No, I don't think so. I think if you were playing a bard, you might shoot for something like that. If you're playing, like, I could see if Cameron did a little more voice work stuff with it, like I could see more Gain having a singy voice.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think he can get away with it with that character for sure, because he's not a bard, but he's very musical, and there's a lot of potential there to kind of delve into these sorts of ideas. But I don't see Cam doing a voice for Morgaine more than he kind of does. Like, he did sort of a voice in one of our recent games where he was kind of more of a really excited in the DCC game.
Yeah, no, his Gizzard the Wizard was.
Mm-hmm.
He definitely did a voice for that. And he actually did a really good job with it. He also did Seamus McClary in the one shot for Ballad of the Pistolero, and he did a kind of an Irish accent. And he did it pretty well. So.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's nice to see people kind of venturing out and getting into that kind of stuff too. Jeff, that was closest Stuart from Mad TV. Yeah, I guess so. That does sound about right. I think that may have actually been one of the running jokes we had that night. Let's see. How do you all handle vocal quirks? You see them all the time in writing, double so in anime. I assume you're talking about kind of like verbal tics and that sort of thing? Or like, what do you mean by vocal quirks?
Like a stutter or an impediment of sorts, or...
it could be kind of like a repetitive word people use, maybe. When people are saying like, hey, don't you know? Or like, something like that where it kind of slips back in.
I think with writing, you see it a lot because it's a matter of, I think that's a good way for them to differentiate the way that when you're reading it, so that you say it in your head, the way that so that you add that kind of voice to it.
Mm-hmm. Okay, so you're talking about like Kupo for the Moogles in Final Fantasy VII, or any of the Final Fantasies, I guess, at that point. So like just kind of I don't mean, is Kupo an actual word? Is it, or is it just like a sound? Because if you're just talking about like sounds, that would be it. I guess you could probably pop a few things in there. Like, I'm trying to think if I've actually got any characters that just have random noises they make or anything of that sort. I think there is some value in that, Quail. I think if you do end up with, using something that's repetitive and you use it often like that, I think there is some value in that. Because it immediately pretty much rocks it in there pretty tight. Air Laser, you want to go ahead and just send that person out? That'd be appreciated. Thank you. Or Animal G, whichever one. Thank you. So, the... Perfect. Well, now they're following, but whatever. So anyway,
Thanks
they're gone there.
Follow.
Yeah, we'll take it. We'll take our number. Much appreciated, guys. Kind
Gotta
of.
live when the follow comes in after the ban. That's awesome.
Yeah, go ahead and block them as well if you wouldn't mind. Every once in a while you're gonna get people like that come in and just try to.
I just ignore them. I mean, I was reading it, but I just ignore them.
Yeah, it's enough where you're trying to keep track of what's happening, and it's something in there like that. But anyway, I think these kind of like additional sounds are kind of character defining sometimes. But again, I'm trying to come up with some examples in my head of characters I've had that use them, but I'm not obviously coming to one.
I think the hard part is consistency. I think the hardest thing with a voice is just whatever you decide you're going to do, whether you're adding ticks or whatever, it's trying to be consistent enough. And it's bad. If you're a player, it's not that. It's a little easier because you got one voice you're trying to do. Mm-hmm. But where someone like Levi separates himself is like he had like 30 voices. He got 30 NPCs on a boat and can flip between them all in like a few seconds with next to no prep time in between. And you can consistently tell which voice it is he's doing every single time. Like he doesn't have to tell you who it is he's speaking as, you can tell. So
yeah, well, I mean, some people are going to have that gift. I imagine he takes some pretty good notes, which is probably the thing I need to be doing more of. Because a lot of times I'm coming up with a voice on the spot and trying to make it work. And then I'm like, I don't like what I'm hearing. And then I'll kind of dial it around. And I'm like, oh, there it is. That's what I want. And then if I don't write a note to myself later of like what that felt like to do or what it kind of was, at its core, what the sounds were, I won't remember it. And the next time I do it, it'll be different. So yeah, I guess it's really just a ton of that.
I've got another NPC you guys are going to meet soon that I've been working on a voice for. And he's very quickly becoming kind of, when I originally wrote Horror for Huttenberg, he was originally like the antagonist. But as the story has developed and I've rewritten more and more of it, like he's kind of pulled away from being like the antagonist, and that's Bravo von Helfrich.
Huh. Interesting.
So I started thinking about because of what he is in the setting and because of what his professions are, I landed with an idea of the voice I wanted to imitate in order to do it. But I couldn't quite hit it, and I ended up somewhere else I didn't intend to be, and I think that's what it's just going to end up being. So I'll tell you what I was shooting for and kind of where I ended up. And even when I get around to actually doing it, it probably won't sound like either one of them. But I was shooting for Jeff Goldblum. And I told my wife I was shooting
Jeff
for Jeff
Goldblum.
But I didn't get there. I didn't get there at all. I listened to some Jeff Goldblum. I tried it. It didn't work. Where I ended up slipping into, and I don't even know if I consider these voices that close together, but where I ended up with was William Shatner's James Kirk.
Wow. Okay. That's a weird turn.
Well, I think it's the cadence of the voice that I ended up more on one than the other. So,
well, so I think it's just mostly just a lot of weird stopping and starting kind of stuff.
Well, right, and that's how Captain Kirk talked.
Yeah, so I can see that. Yeah,
I just can't get the voice high enough to do Goldblum, so I ended up on Kirk.
Yeah, he's an interesting voice. So we missed one of the things I was going to ask earlier was way back, but it's been re-asked here, so we'll go ahead and go with it here.
Okay.
Soulstorm was asking how we would do a cat to human voice. She was saying something she thought maybe close to Spanish. Now, we did this on our first voice.
With the Tabaxi, because Tabaxi were released for the Ravenloft Curse of Strahd. Tabaxi became a player race you could play in D&D. So we did talk a little about Tabaxi then.
Yeah, so like we kind of had different takes on it, because I think that was the night we had. Who was our guest for that one? That was at Naravia that night, or was that?
We didn't have a guest for that one.
I thought we did, because I thought we were talking to somebody who was playing one.
Naravia, we talked about backgrounds, and Naravia was playing a
okay.
Tabaxi, but we didn't talk about the voicing on that episode. Which, by the way, episode 4 of the Wisdom Check.
Good lord, man, that's
4 or 5. It was
digging
5,
way back.
but yeah, go way back. So.
Yeah, we kind of settled on a few different things, but it depends on the style of cat you're talking about. So, like, we kind of played around with a couple different ideas. They could have been kind of like the sleek, kind of light kind of cat, or it could be like a lion, you know, where you have this like growly kind of, you know, like a Smog the Dragon kind of voice, you know.
You know, it's funny because you're right. It does depend on which kind of cat you're blending in. So it's because if you like the first one that comes to mind is the lion from The Wizard of Oz.
Oh, jeez, is it? Because that's not where my mind went.
No, but I'm just saying, like you think about a cat-like voice, like it's you either go to that or you go to something like a Sylvester the Cat, right? Like because I'm old enough, those are ones that for some reason come to my head first, right? So you get that kind of thuckatash.
Oh my god!
You know, you could, or you even go like I said with the Cowardly Lion, right? Like he was definitely a cat person. So I don't know. There's a lot of Shere Khan.
Shere Khan is what I was always thinking of. If you're going like a lion kind of vibe, but you were saying Soulstorm was saying assassin cat, so probably not a growly type.
I'd go with a whisper. Cats are very, very quiet already to begin with. I would go with like a whispery voice. Like I wouldn't even push heavy cat. I would just go for whisper.
Well, one of the things we talked about on that last one, because I agree with that, by the way, but I think one of the things we talked about last time was the character in mind was, I think, it's like a snow leopard or something. So like if you know about those, they're very good at moving silently through snow. So like they don't hit very hard. So I would make your voice kind of follow that, you know, so like everything is light, like in how you present your words. So instead of like having a thud to it, it's very displaced out, you know. So
now what Soulstorm is leaning into is that she is playing a were creature on Werewolf
Shifter.
Apocalypse game. Shifter,
that one.
Which is the Bastet, I believe, is the name of the werecats. They're the Bastet. And so the Bastet have a very different cultural background than if you're talking like Tabaxi and what they're based off of. So if you're going to go for something like, depending on how hard you're leaning into that tribe, if you want to call them that for those. So it's...
Yeah, because you get the Egyptian kind of vibe to that one.
Right.
So I was laughing because Soulstorm just wrote that she's bad at whispering because she's too loud. I don't know that it has to be a whisper per se, because like, you know, it's just like, you know, whispering doesn't have to be quiet. I think it's more of just the style of how it's said. So I'm trying to think of like, just thinking like elegant, thinking sleek when you're talking. I think at that point would probably get it across. I don't know if your character is male or female necessarily, but you wanted to be a Bastet so badly? Yeah. I don't know. I guess you can kind of get into the whole like old cartoon vibe, you know, like the Siamese, you know, cats, you know, like from the whatever movie that was.
The We Are Siamese, If You Please cats?
I mean, obviously you don't want to go that way.
The little song, like I was gonna say, like, where are you going with this, Jeff? Because that's the only Siamese cats I can think of.
Yeah, I mean that's what I was thinking, but or like a Catwoman from like the old movies, you know, from the old Batman stuff. That might be a good way to go.
Yeah, the Michelle Pfeiffer like Catwoman, like
they
just kind of added
added
purr to their voice.
Yeah, throw a purr here and there, but then there's always this like extended tonality of their voice. So it's
like a welcome, darling.
It's always very open, like that, you know, like almost. There's not really a lisp, but there's a, I don't know what it's really called, but yeah, the original Catwoman, yeah.
Air Laser is not old enough to realize that Michelle Pfeiffer is not the original Catwoman.
Oh yeah.
Oh. Growing up with the '60s Adam West Batman, that Catwoman, she had a voice too.
That was pretty particular too. There was a lot going on in that one.
To do. Yeah. In the movie, yes, in the movie, you are correct.
Yeah, so I mean that's an interesting one too. Like, but what was the name? Oh, Eartha Kitt. Wow, I did not know that name. But yeah, I think the picking a voice is an interesting exercise. Trying to think, like we were talking earlier, Resident Hana, about sing-songy types of voices. You know, like musicality in a voice. Like most people don't have their regular voice and their singing voice sounding the same, right? Like there's something about an actual sung tone that is very different than just speaking. But we were talking about Morgaine potentially being a character who could have a more singy, songy voice that would work for that type of character. So it might be kind of interesting. Okay, yeah. So Tigger is a sing-songer in your opinion? Yeah.
Yeah. I guess I hadn't thought of Tigger as a sing-song.
There's wonderful voices in a wonderful way. Yep.
Yeah.
I mean, it's all up and down tonality. Yeah, Bill Shatner is probably a sing-songer, I guess. So you did consider it. So Resonante did consider doing a talking in verse as a character. That's interesting.
I'd be tough because, like I said, it's the problem with something like that is consistency.
Yeah,
like because you have to think of it you almost have to be thinking in lyrical form and be able to have what you want to say like on command, ready to go. Like,
yeah, that's hard.
Be easier to do with a script. Like if you were in a play or something where you had a script, you could put more to that. As what we're doing is improv, essentially. With tabletop role-playing games, you're doing a lot of improv. Like it'd be hard to do rhymes like that.
Yeah, rhymes, yeah, in particular, are pretty challenging.
Or even in something lyrical like that, it would be harder to do.
If you say meow all the time, you're basically cat. Don't do that.
So then you're on the Super Trooper.
Yeah.
So you just did the Super Trooper rap, meow. Okay, now, meow. I'll tell you right here what you're going to do is you're going to pull over, meow. You have a good day now, meow.
I think Skeezer's voice was originally thought of as a sing-songy voice.
Oh, we got to redeem for Etrigan. I'm going to have to ask who Etrigan is.
I think I know the name, but I don't know where I know it from or what it is. But while we get our education here, Skeezer's voice was very intentionally up and down musical. So like I wanted it to be kind of like a xylophone almost kind of sounding thing. So, it's all up and down. So it goes around and around from the up and top and the registers and all the way back down and over here. So it's like always up and down. And that was kind of a trait that I wanted to go with. It was mumbly, kind of bumbling sounds, but they were also up and down the register, like your vocal cords just kind of breaking here and there. And
a DC character.
Okay. Gone, the
really.
former
right,
man,
I'm going
rise
to
the
Google
demon
search
Etrigan.
it and see if I... Is he Green Lantern? He's not Green Lantern.
This
Demon
character had a voice.
Demon fused with Jason blood. Is it Jason Voorhees? Like, what is Jason blood?
I don't know, but I will bust out some voice mod here real quick because there's a pretty kick-ass set of voices for this.
Oh man, I'm taking a look at this guy now. So yeah, he's kind of a big hulking guy with fin sort of ears and some short little spiky horns on top of his head and big jagged teeth.
So he's a demon. Okay.
He's a demon. Yeah, he's got a demon look going to him. They calls him a demon, so he's very much so. Boy, He always speaks in rhymes, I guess. That's why they were bringing him up?
That sounds rough. I don't know if I can do that, but there is this pretty easy ass trick here. Just use this voice modulator. Let's see. So once again, Voice Mod Pro is where you get this one. This one is apparently evil. We'll see how this one sounds. So what's the line you want me to say as an evil demon? Okay, there it is. I see it quoted.
Gone, the form of man. Rise, he, the demon X again.
That's not bad.
I like some of these voices. That one's pretty good. Like, there's some cool tricks there. Like, one of the things I'm gonna like about this is that you can do like double speak. I think that's the one that's it seems like it belongs in a lot of places, but it's impossible to do on your own.
Is that what Clint's doing for Bergen?
He's applied a bunch of effects to his voice that make it sound echoey and a little bit more spacious. I don't remember what all exactly he's done, but there's some things to it. Like this double speak, though, this will get you there.
So double speak is what you're using?
Yeah, well, no, I'm about to. We'll see if this actually sounds right. So like this is like, in like horror movies when the person has both like that weird female and male voice at the same time, or like where somebody's like possessed or something.
So it sounds like this, and everything is doubled up, both male and.
Oh yeah, I like that one.
Yeah, there's a lot of them that are trash in this thing, but if you dig through and you find the ones that are good, it's pretty cool.
What I imagine is that based on your normal voice, there are ones that will work for you and ones that won't, and then someone else picks it up and their voice is different than yours, so they try different filters and it works for them and not for you, and vice versa probably. So I'm guessing that's probably what you'll find if you pick up a voice modulator, is that some of them will work and some won't. Can you design your own?
Lindy. Yes. They have that's the update button. There's a way you can do a voice maker, and so you basically fiddle around with delay, vocoder, wah-wah pedals, reverb, double pitching, pitch, flanger, chorus, high pass, low pass, equalizer, tremolo, stereo effects, and then there's mixing, there's voice volume, there's how intelligible it's going to be, and you could fiddle with all of that and make your own, or you could take the voices that they already have prepackaged and edit them. So I'm kind of like tweaking some of them a little bit now. And I might make them specifically for some characters. But I think it'll be nice for certain things. Now, the problem with it is you can't hear your own voice with the effect on it unless you play it back to yourself. And then it's a little bit off-putting.
So this becomes part of your DM prep.
Yeah.
Because you have to play the voices, hear it back, play it again, hear it back, and then hotkey them, I assume, so you can quickly switch from one to the other.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's exactly what it is. There isn't on a guitar pedal board for voices. And Laugh Love Lindy, I think I have to go through and tweak them because, like you said, there's a lot of them that are a little bit too much. And there's some of them actually add other effects to the background too. Like there was one that was where's it at? I think it's called Cave. Let's see.
So it does like an echo.
So you'll hear cave dripping sound and openness of it, but also kind of echo. So you had that kind of ambient effect as well.
So Joker says he used to play a lot of creepy characters, and the best advice he always used is the one from Mark Hamill doing the Joker. Said laughter is not a sound, it's a musical instrument. And I think definitely for Hamill playing Joker, that was definitely true.
Oh yeah, I mean that's the core of it, Yeah, if you can get the laugh down, well, because I think the laugh is like an embodiment of the whole person, right? Like everyone's laugh is unique. Character. Well, that person in particular, but I think if I heard multiple people I know laughing, everyone has a different style of laugh, and like the way it sounds is very different. And it's one of those things you can't really fake too much without it being obvious, right? Like people know when you're genuinely laughing.
Yeah.
And it's your personality kind of coming out, I think.
That is true. Yeah, no, a laugh is one of the things that I would be interested to see if, like, we've never really challenged, I guess, like Levi to like have him have to laugh in all these different characters.
I bet he can do it.
Like, you probably can, but I mean, it's just one of the things you just don't see people have to do very often. Because I imagine if I was doing Clashiest and you made me laugh, I'd probably just laugh. Like I wouldn't think of laughing as Clashiest, but.
Well, I think that's the trick of it, right? It forces you to think about how your character would sound in that situation, right? So, like, unlike other words you might use or other sentences or whatever, laughing is a particular thing that you really have to think about. You know?
Yeah.
I think that's a good exercise. I hadn't really thought about that. Like,
I hadn't either, but with Clashiest, if I was still playing them, the first thing that come to mind is the Mike Tyson laugh gif.
Okay.
Like, I can't even do a Mike Tyson laugh, but if you've ever seen the gif of Mike Tyson laughing, it's great.
I don't have any idea what Mike Tyson sounds like laughing.
I don't either. But
you don't either?
The gif is famous, so.
Is it like the sound of one hand clapping? Like, it's one of those, just supposed to put you in a meditative, paradoxical state?
I suppose so.
Laughing can be used to make a character sound like he is crying. Well, I mean, I guess that breaking of the sound, kind of that bouncing kind of sound of it. Yeah, that makes sense.
Well, and again with the character Joker, we've seen that in film and on TV where I think is Jack Nicholson's Joker from Batman. Like he gets his face reworked on, he sees himself and he starts crying, and then it turns into a laugh. So you see it go the other direction.
Oh, the fade up. Yeah.
Fades up into the laugh after from initially crying and seeing what had happened to him. So.
Well, I think that's a particular style of it, though, right? Because it's hysterical. Like that's that, like out of control maniacal sound that is, the Joker, right? Like it's I've lost it. I'm out here now. Because I think that is a distinct sound.
They always refer to it as a laugh, but it's more of a cackle. It's got a very much of a cackle to the laugh, like it's.
Mm-hmm. Oh, sure, Quail. Yeah, crying is easy. Just actually cry. Yeah, okay, sure. That's a skill I don't have. I can't just be like, it's time. I guess I can get a bowl of lemons ready and just like make it happen. But
actors say that they always have to have something that they pull from to make themselves cry.
Yeah, a memory.
So you got to have something that you just pull from.
I mean, it's still a skill. I think you would have to practice it, being able to channel that kind of feeling. I think that would be pretty hard to do. But, I mean, that's why they get paid money to be an actor. And we don't. My
nose has been broken. I have a deviated septum, so my sense of smell is mostly gone. So even the onion Soulstorm don't work on me. I can chop onions, and unless I get the stuff literally in my eyes by rubbing it doesn't affect me.
That would have been handy back in the day when I was working in a restaurant. So Joker's talking about being able to do the predator sounds after practicing a bunch of growling. Well, yeah, because there's different places where the sound can come from. Like, and I think that's the biggest thing is the more voices I've tried doing, and whenever I've actually succeeded at a voice, it's always a different feeling of where it is in my throat or in my mouth or wherever. Like, there's like a physical sensation of where it's produced. That seems like unique to that voice.
Well, yeah, because you have to use different parts of your tongue and your throat to make either deeper or higher voices. So you do have to kind of push it up there. If you want to go for something nasally, you have to push it up there. It's not going to happen. So I
don't
think
there's any other way. Yeah.
We've done a lot of talking about some different voices that we try to do, and we often will pick somebody's voice that's recognizable. But I think, Levi, he's the first one he'll tell you too. It's like a really bad impression is a good character voice. So, what I just encourage people to do is like, don't worry if you can't hit the voice you're shooting for. Like whatever you land on though, just stick the landing and just go with it and it'll be fine. Like, just go and do so.
Quail Deity is saying, how do you guys keep your voice consistent session to session? That they're finding that they tried to voice Liam on TCC and had a hard time keeping it at the beginning. The beginnings of game sessions, those are always hard, I find. But what I was talking about before was that I think you have to have a notebook or something where you write down whatever descriptors that make sense to you for that voice. Like, so you kind of come up with your own system of like, oh, this one is a red voice with, I don't know, like sounds like leaves falling or something. Something weird that is like, makes sense to you. Like, that doesn't make any sense to me at all, but you get the idea. So you like, I would put down some like words that describe what that voice is, or a person that you're, like Dustin's saying, a person you're trying to emulate with that voice. And I think if you're bad at doing impersonations, like the two of us are, if you aim for a voice, you will land on that same bad voice probably.
Yeah.
So
yeah, I mean the quick answer is one, I'm not positive you have to be that consistent, because like, here's the thing, as a GM, I've already gone back and watched the first 2 episodes of Horror in Huttenberg at least twice all the way through. Mm-hmm. 1, I'm taking certain game notes out of it. 2, I'm listening to voices and picking up things that maybe I didn't catch in the heat of the moment when I was GMing. So I've already gone back and listened to the episode. So I've already reheard the voices I use from NPCs read back, spit back at me by myself. So I'm already taking that back in. So we're going into chapter 3 this coming Sunday. And if I pull a voice again, would you be able to tell me immediately that the voice that I use for the Elf Alexi Arkwright isn't the same one I used last time? Probably
not this early. I think once you establish it, though, if it was consistently established, I think at that point, yeah, you would be able to tell the difference.
Right. And some of that is just a matter of which NPCs are going to be your main ones that are there for the long haul, and which ones are splash for that episode. Mm-hmm. Max Keller, the inmate that they met, that the convict that they met inside the jail cell, like, I didn't give him too much of a voice because you're not probably going to see him again. So it wasn't that important for me to really heavily voice him. But so it's, yeah. Do you find listening to yourself important? I think you have to if you're doing voicing.
If you're doing it online, for sure. I never did that before, obviously, because we never recorded anything. But now that that's an option, I think it's a tool that you should probably use. It's a lot of time, but like, I don't know. I'm probably going to go back and re-listen, write down some notes of things that happened for that first episode of Pathfinder, and make sure that I'm kind of keeping things consistent. Like, I was already thinking about it with some of the character voices that we use that were kind of distinct. So I used a very up in your nose, very kind of arrogant sounding, stuffy voice for Mortimer, and he's a librarian, so he's very sophisticated, that kind of thing. But I was listening it into my head earlier in the weekend, and I couldn't make the sound again. I couldn't figure out what it was, and I went back and re-listened to it. I was like, oh yeah, okay, that's what I did. And it became pretty easy. So it's a good tool. I don't think you have to, but I think if you got an online audience that's trying to pay attention and keep consistent, they'll hold you more accountable to it than your players will. I don't think the players will necessarily realize it, but somebody will comment. Somebody out there will get you.
Yeah, I mean, it's possible they will. It's hard to say. I don't know.
Yeah. But yeah, I think, again, it comes down to just knowing your character. Like, if you know what your character's thinking style is, I think the voice comes out, even if there is no voice. Because I think it changes what you're saying and how you deliver it.
Yeah, and if you spend enough time figuring that out, like we talked about, whether it's an NPC that you're GMing or whether it's a PC that you're going to play, like, if you spend enough time figuring out, finding their voice in a lot of different ways, then you can end up with something that's going to be consistent that you're able to do all the time. And often you'll still have to have a phrase or a word that kind of gets you into the voice. But you'll be able to hit it pretty consistently once you get there.
Now that is interesting. Laugh Love Lindy is saying that she had a voice, or a mic rather, that played back her own voice to her. And it was super weird at first, but then she got used to it. And now she can't not use it. But it's caused her to actually shift what her head voice is and her inner monologue voice to match what actually is produced. If for those of you guys out there who don't actually record your own voice and listen back later, you may not realize, but you don't sound like you think you sound at all.
No, not at all.
It's weird. Like the first few times I made videos for YouTube, like going back and editing, I'm like, that is not my voice. That's somebody else. You know, like, I mean, obviously it's my voice, but that does not sound like me. And it's because you're used to hearing your own voice as it resonates through your skull. So like, you don't hear it like other people do. You got it for podcasts and streaming, and man, that's wild. But yeah, I guess if you heard it enough, you would remap in your brain what you think your voice sounds like to what it actually sounds like. That's interesting. I would have never guessed that.
Yeah, I don't. That's I don't know if I could be hearing myself and then continue to speak as it was playing. It would. I think I'd get too distracted by it. But
it's real hard, especially if there's a delay of any type. Like what she was describing is there's no delay, and I think at that point it's not too bad. Provided if your earphones are like the ones I have right now that are pretty sound canceling. Like right now, if I have them on, I almost can't hear myself talking, and that's actually another problem. But I think if you were hearing your own voice feedbacking into your ears here, it wouldn't be too bad if it was on the moment, like as you're producing the sound. Where it gets weird is there's a slight delay that suddenly is like
so that's
vertigo
gonna
inducing.
be more like what it sounds like when you're public speaking, because you're speaking.
Yeah, I guess so.
The speakers are there. You're probably hearing it as you're, as you're talking, you're hearing it also through speakers. So it would probably be a lot like what it would sound like when you're public speaking, which I've actually done more of than you would imagine. But
yeah, I mean, I guess if you had it loud enough where that was drowning out what you're hearing produced out of your own mouth, yeah. Yeah, so yeah, the no delay is definitely the difference there. So like,
we got a question from Quell Deity. It says, so different question, do you ham up more on stream?
Yeah, for sure. I think you need to have a little bit more exaggerated energy on a stream. I mean, I don't intentionally do it, but I think there's a subconscious knowledge that you're performing, and I think people are performing in a certain way. Maybe it's different for you. I don't know.
I don't know if I consider it hamming up.
Okay.
I think there is. Well, I guess it depends on the character. Like Clashy is definitely hammed up.
Mm-hmm.
But like, I don't really feel like Bowron does, and I don't really feel like Vagabond will really ham up exactly.
But that's personality, right? I think you are hamming it up, but because the type of character you're doing with, say, Vagabond is that like stoic, staying back, and then I come in to tell you what's going on. Right, it's a different kind of thing.
Right. No, I think that if there are characters who are hams, then you ham it up. But I don't know if you ham it up intentionally with characters that aren't hams in general. Like maybe as a GM, you have to a little bit. You have to have some ham characters in there. And I would say maybe that is true. Levi definitely has a variety of ham characters in Everstorm. So, whether it's Toleg or, some of those, I think that you do have to maybe have a few of those for energy's sake. So maybe as an STGM or whatever, that probably makes more sense. But as a player, I don't know if I would necessarily say you do.
Quill Deity, your second follow-up question here is the flip side of that question is, do you bring that performance element back to your home games? Well, all of our games now are online, so we don't really have
these are our home games. I run games at the game shop, and I'm going to be running games for Zweihander's organized play community next week for Gen Con. So Gen Con's gone virtual, and I am an GM for one of those sessions, and I have characters that I have to start working on my voicing for those, because it's something as a GM I feel like I should do. And since I'm running for complete strangers, and it is going to be an online format, the same way me and Jeff are talking to each other now, I don't think it's streamed, so I don't have to worry about an audience outside of my 8 players or 6 players or whatever I may have. So
yeah, it'll be a different vibe for sure, but I don't know. I think Quill Deity for us, Dustin and I, we talk about this all the time too. But when we did the LARP community, I think that's what changed how we do our characters. I think before that, we were just kind of like low key. Like I was certainly the shy guy that didn't talk very much at all. Or like when I did say something, it was like very shocking, you know. But once we kind of slipped into LARP, where you're filling out that character all the time, every day, and you're thinking about it all the freaking time while you're in character, it became easier to roleplay the more hammed up it was. Not necessarily high energy, but like with Oleg, it certainly was. Oleg was very in-your-face, loud, brash, kind of obnoxious kind of character. But I think once you start to really push a personality out of your mouth, it becomes easier to do. Easier to distance yourself out of it.
My LARP character was a gangrel, who was he was a shapeshifter. He was a vampire, and so a lot of my acting with Landon was less a voice, although he did kind of a growl to his voice when he would do things, but because he was a wolf. But but it was a little more of the physicality of it. It was more
squatting
of the physical,
down,
the physical acting, the hopping around and leaping and things of that nature that brought that character a little more to life than probably any voice acting I did at the time.
Oh yeah, for sure. But I think that's another trick. I think is whether it's voice acting, your physicality, your costuming, whatever. As soon as you can get to the point where it doesn't feel like you doing the thing any longer, that's when you have your character expressed. Yeah,
and that was one of the things with Lana for sure. Like when I put on he had an outfit. It was regular clothing. Like if you'd have seen me, and you wouldn't have thought I was cosplaying anything. But like it was his Seto clothes. And when I put on the Dallas Cowboy hat and the flannel shirt and everything, like it was like putting on a person at that point.
Yeah, it's putting on your uniform. I mean, I guess there's a reason why uniforms are of value, right?
Well, they say so. Yeah.
Yeah. Let's see. So this is interesting. Joker was talking about he's running a Legend of the Five Rings game set in I don't know where it's set. Chile, basically. But anyway, he was saying using language from the area, phrases and stuff like that. And in particular, noticing the changes in his voice when he speaks in Spanish. I've noticed that a lot with bilingual or multilingual people, is that they do have different voices dependent on what language you're speaking. But they also talk about how they think in different thoughts when they're thinking in different languages.
Well, I'm not bilingual. I mean, I took a few years of Spanish, and sentence structure is so different that I think that maybe that changes your thought process when you're, like we don't think as much about conjugating like verbs, but like verbs get conjugated in Spanish. Like it's a very big deal. Like, or else your whole sentence goes to hell in a handbasket real quick. So
I mean, that's familiarity, right? So like English has some really specific rules that we all just know. And I'm like, you don't know it until somebody violates it, right? But then once you notice that, you can't explain why that's wrong. Like there's certain phrases that break the rules of the English language, but it does it the right way. And that's how it sounds right. It's really bizarre.
What all do you do to encourage voices or do you from your players? Okay, this is an easy one. First and foremost, do them yourself.
Yep.
Nothing will get the other players at the table to role play or voice act or anything else than you taking initiative and doing it. Because if you do it, then they're going to feel comfortable doing it as well. And the ones who won't, and that's still cool. Like you don't worry about that. But if you're a GM or a DM and you set the tone by doing some voice acting, you're going to pull a little something probably out of at least a few of your players.
Yeah, it's there's a Cam exclamation point there. Yeah, some people don't do voices. I mean, that's just the thing. If they're not comfortable doing it, they don't want to do it, they're not going to have fun doing it. But I do think
like he didn't really do one for Morgaine for a long campaign. But like I said, a two-shot thing for Gizzard the Wizard Cam put on a voice and did it for the one shot. I mean, he's even doing one for Spicy Mike, really. So even for a little bit longer campaign. So Cam can do some voices. He'll fool you a little bit. Like
he can.
He kind of sometimes will act like maybe he doesn't, but then he gets a chance. He does them. So
yeah, but Dustin's absolutely right though. It's just a matter of setting the tone. Because I think a lot of it is people are afraid to sound stupid. Like even when I'm on the show right now saying we're going to sound stupid on purpose, I'm catching myself controlling the sound coming out of my voice. Like I know this is about to not be what I want it to sound like. Whereas if I wasn't on the stream, I'm sure I can nail these voices after a couple tries. But for whatever reason, there's enough like social dynamics at play that I restrict myself. And I think that's true at the table for people as well. Like they come into it, they don't want to be the weird one playing a character. They don't want people to think they're the strange personality at the group or whatever. But once as a DM or GM or whatever, you lay the foundation out there and say this is a place where that's not only acceptable, but it's encouraged. People just go ahead and they do it, especially if you have some goofy, stupid thing that you do that, sets the bar really low, Let's see. So Joker, you're saying that when you're switching languages, it's a big change. Yeah.
I imagine it is. I didn't take enough Spanish to speak it fluently to you to make you go ape shit, Joker. But
yeah. So what you're saying there is kind of fascinating, though, because you're saying that you have to transition from one mind to another, essentially, when you're switching languages. And you're saying that if somebody suddenly interjected some Spanish, it would derail your train of thought completely. And I kind of wonder about that because if you want to kind of get into deep thinking here, like your personality and stuff are pretty malleable, really. It's just like a story you're telling yourself about yourself, right? So like it can change anytime. And there's no clear example of that than when somebody constructs a new mind, essentially, to handle another language. Like I think that's part of why it's so hard.
I have a question for you, Jeff.
Let's hear it.
I mean, you're not bilingual necessarily.
Nope, not at all. Not at all.
But you do have a certain amount of ethnicity in your family.
Sure.
And you have family members who are bilingual.
Yep.
Does a particular place bring about using one language over the other? Like, for instance, if you were to go to a family member who speaks primarily Spanish as a first language, do you immediately find that like speaking Spanish is easier when you're in that place? Or like, I'm curious for someone who is like,
not for me.
Like if you put on a hat and you can suddenly do your Cockney accent better because you're in character, does walking into a familiar surrounding suddenly make it easier for you to do one or the other?
I think it would be if there was more time spent around that side of the family. They live primarily in Florida, and we just far distance, so you don't travel very often. So I wasn't around them on the day-to-day kind of level. But I think if you were a bilingual person who was living with people like actually what I did notice when I had Mexican roommates, they would speak Spanish to each other throughout the day, and I would find that I could understand what they were saying. I couldn't speak it like to save my life, but like I could pick out meaning, and I think it's more that you kind of develop a connection between the sounds and the body language. And when they go together, you can kind of predict what somebody is saying, even if you don't understand the actual meaning of the word itself.
Airlaser says she is that way. If she's in France or French speaking place, she can understand it, almost fluently and have no issues responding. Yeah, see, for me, English is a very strong first language, and I did try to study a second language, but I never got that good at it. So I'm not somebody who can flip back and forth between two languages, so I never have that problem. If you ask me to speak in Spanish, I can string together a couple of words, and that's about the best I can do.
It's about it, yeah.
After about 5 years of intense study, that's about all I can handle. So
yeah, I've started and stopped multiple times trying to learn Spanish, and it's for whatever reason, of all things in the world, I could pick up just about anything the first time somebody brings it to me. But languages, it's like hitting a brick wall. Like, it's just instantaneously, nope, can't do it. Oh, so Animal G is prompting us that it's the end of the show already. Holy crap. That went by really fast.
This is a Jeff Dustin show. We technically can go to like 3 a.m. if we want to, Animal G.
Are we going to do that again? Are we going to go to the...
I don't know. It's up to you.
I don't know.
We
I
talked
guess
about
we
maybe talk about itemization still today, but we never did get to it. So we can just save it for a different day if you're ready to wrap up.
I don't care which way. If the audience wants us to continue, I will be happy to continue. I mean, we got a lot of questions going, which is nice, but
yeah,
it all depends. So Quill, you're saying it set a different tone of your campaign afterwards. What was that in reference to?
I think he was saying doing some funny voices and stuff for help set a tone in his campaign.
Yeah, because well, I mean that's something true of games. Those first game sessions, you can kind of establish a tone, and that's something. Actually, it's kind of an interesting topic. With the start of our games, like your game and my game, like your game, I automatically have a feeling about how the game world is.
Is that because it's a sequel?
No, there's something about the way you've kind of set it up, the particulars of how you describe things that feel different when you're doing it in Zweihander than when you were in, say, Dungeons and Dragons. I don't know what it is. I can't pinpoint it, but I think it is also some of the art. That
I was
going to
say, is it the aesthetics of the art that's
it might be
that? Because I can see that being the case. I don't know if that's. I didn't know if it's because you did kind of have watch and edit all of the Terra and Treefell episodes. If you got a sense of what the world is before,
I got a little bit
into it now as a player. So I didn't know if that was helping you. It'd be interesting to talk to Lindy and Chuck and them and see if they got the same sense. In particular, it'd be interesting for me to ask Chuck because he's played
a lot of Zweihander
campaigns. So in every GM, I think it gives a little different feel, even in the same. Because Zweihander does not yet, they're working on it, but does not yet have its own campaign setting. So everything is based on the couple of adventures they put out and a lot of community, like essentially DM's Guild for Zweihander community writing has helped shape what the Zweihander world will probably eventually look like when they get to it.
Oh, I think some of it maybe due to the game, just because like I know it's based on Warhammer lore, and Warhammer Fantasy's got this gritty, grimy, life has no value.
Fantasy. Yeah, it's low fantasy, so
I instantly get the vibe of it's always raining and overcast. Like there's puddles everywhere, that kind of feeling. And again, I think it's because it's black and white. But for whatever it is that you've done, you've established this tone very quickly. And that's something I'm working on for my games. I want to do the session 0 was light and kind of gentle and open. And I want to contrast it with this move into this next area that we're going into. And
it's going to be a little tough for you, I think, with the PCs that you have still.
Maybe
like we're not quite as over the top as we were for the module. But I don't know if I feel like we're really as drawn back still for that tonal shift. It'll be interesting.
Well, and I think what's going to be interesting is seeing how those characters react and fit into this new space. Because like right now, the environment I put out there, we spent a lot of time talking to a little girl that was kind of frolicking around and dancing and doing her thing. We talked to a guy who was essentially probing you guys for information about something he was worried about, but keeping quiet because there's a kid there. And then everyone else is essentially ignoring you. So like you really had this kind of like light, no stakes kind of vibe going on intentionally. And now with what I'm doing next, I'm trying to, showcase this invasion that's going to be happening, this position you happen to be in, and then we're going to be transitioning to a new location and a new culture that's going to be completely different. And I think at that point, we're going to see how those characters react and how they either absorb some of those traits of that or actively push against them. And I think that'll be interesting.
Quail Deity's asking another question. Says, do you find yourselves approaching voices differently in different systems? No. I consider, and this is something I know we kind of talked about in the Discord this week, and I'm going to hit on this a little bit now. I make every character, I don't care what system it is, I treat it as an individual.
Sure.
From the sheet all the way to the personality, the voice, everything is about who that individual is in my head. I don't care what the mechanics are. So system doesn't matter to me. It's who is this character? Sometimes the setting might make a little difference.
I think the setting makes a big difference to me.
The setting can make a little difference. If you tell me it's a Wild West game, I'm probably going to use a Western accent, maybe. If you tell me it's, werewolf and I'm picking, it's going to be based on what tribe I am, maybe. Or if, I'm a D&D character, maybe which race or ancestry or whatever I pick. But like I said, I'm trying to get away from some of that even. So I don't know. I move more towards the individual with every character I make. So more and more than I had before.
I would think the setting is the biggest contributor. I think if you're talking about, I think there is almost certainly a difference between fantasy Dungeons and Dragons and modern or cyberpunk. There's a different flavor that kind of comes with that. There's, the urban environment and that modern slang and stuff is different than that fantasy element. And I think our group, we tend to integrate a lot of modern sayings and, make jokes and stuff in character that kind of muddies it a little bit. But I think that's, can we play some werewolf together? Sure. I actually am excited to play that.
I love some werewolf, and I can almost never get these guys to run werewolf for me. I always run werewolf for them. I almost never get to play in it. So
I don't know that I've seen you get a chance to play that except for way back in the day.
The very first. Okay, a little fun fact here. We're going way in the way back machine. The first time I sat down at a table and played in a role-playing game with Jeff was the very last session of a Werewolf the Apocalypse game. And I don't know how Jeff got invited to what was the last session, but it was a shit show. And that was the first time me and Jeff roleplayed together.
Yeah,
I wasn't sure we were going to see him again after that.
No, that was a bad situation to come into.
It was brutal.
It was like, okay, what are you playing? I guess I think it was a Get a Fenris.
You were a Get a Fenris, and at one point you were doing backstrokes in the big lake of blood because that's just where the combat was at that point. And you were like, I don't know what I'm doing here. This is stupid. I do a backstroke in the blood. I was laughing so hard because I'm like, this guy's never going to come back and play with us again.
It was a close call. Yeah, because I got invited, and they were like, oh yeah, we're just doing this ongoing werewolf game. I'm like, okay, I don't know anything about werewolf. And so I sat down with the books. I'm like, oh, this looks really cool. I like this. This could be kind of neat. And then I get there, and it's like you guys are fighting like the worm or some shit. It wasn't even like a normal level of like, oh, fight a big bad guy. It was like the worst thing that could possibly of all time, force of nature. Your players are getting, mind turned to the dark side, and you're walking down the spiral, and there's like big column of blood everywhere. It's like basically like descending into the pits of hell and fighting like the Balrog, I guess. It's like cool. It was something. Yeah.
The thing I remember the most from that entire combat was Jeff doing back.
That's the only thing I remember.
Literally swimming and doing the backstroke in a lake of blood. That's what I remember from that game.
Yep. The funny thing is that same guy who ran that game, because I think it was Bryce, right?
That was Bryce's game. Yep.
So the second game you guys invited me to was a Planescape game that you later referenced as a reference for Raining Bullets. And in that game, I came in and we ended up on a lake in a boat, and we were looking for a portal, and I had a key, and I was just so frustrated with the scene that I just literally just combed the lake with a key in my hand up in the air until I found it. So like both of his games, for some reason, I end up in aquatic situations just wasting time.
Yeah.
And I thought that was the end of that as well. But for some reason, I came back, and I don't know why.
We started running games at your house. That's what happened. So.
Yeah, but I don't even remember how that happened. But
I don't either. But I'm pretty sure it happened with 3.5. 3.5, I think, was the savior of... Well, maybe, because we played Vampire. We played a lot of Vampire.
Yeah, we did Dark Ages Vampire that I ran. That was a pretty big one. Is blood technically aquatic? It's primarily made out of water.
It is mostly water, technically.
Mm-hmm. I'm going to claim it.
I mean, it's like 50-50 liquid. I should know.
Yeah.
I handle it all day, every day.
I'm gonna go with the yes on that one. But yeah, like that Dark Ages game I love that game. That was a fun one to run. Found an interesting RPG. What is it? Let's see what it is. Yeah, Vampire Dark Ages in high school. I ran a game, and the players all got into it so much that they essentially ran the game at a certain point. Like their interaction was so intense that they practically scripted the plot for me, and they liked the game so much, and we had so much free time apparently at the time that we even got to the point where we were playing like 3 times in the same day. So like I remember there was like 1 week where I ran the game like 2 or 3 times a day with like breaks to eat for like a solid week. I don't know how that was even remotely possible, but we did it.
I was in college. I didn't play in that game. I mean,
That's right, you weren't in that
I think I played like 1 or 2 times. That was a game that you ran after me and Levi and Clint had graduated.
That's true. I forgot about that. So like,
yeah,
that
so
was
I was actually in the game.
Yeah, so it was Cam,
Cam, Mikey,
Barry, and so 2 people you guys don't know.
The BJB.
Yes, Steve was there. The Tuttle.
Yeah, Stevie T.
Levi occasionally dropped in, but
yeah, those of us who were in college,
too.
we would occasionally come back and play in a session, but we didn't. We weren't the main players in those.
I'm trying to remember who else was in that, because there were a few more players. Clint was in it for sure because he played a mage. Because Clint always has to play something else.
Fun fact, Soulstorm. I am a blood banker. True story.
That's interesting. Yeah, I mean, it's just a saline solution. Yeah, you're fine. You don't need blood.
We dump blood. We dump our blood bank blood into saline all the time.
So Joker, you redeemed the question. What is it?
Is the name of it? He says
Shakespearean era. Wow, I mean, they have to play that way?
I mean, I'm guessing he's telling his players they have to play that way. Like, I have a feeling you could pick it up and...
I don't know. If that's in the rule system, I'm happy not to play it.
I think it's good to try to get into the era as much as you can if you're going to play an era style of game, but...
Yeah, but
I hate to think, like, I'm sorry, if you can't speak in these kinds of terms and languages, you need not apply for the game. You're out. Like, I don't know.
That's for a particular group. That's like reenactment people, which, more power to them if that's what they enjoy doing and want to do it that way. Let's see. So, Quail DD's asking us, do you ever try to replicate your players' voices?
Yes.
Boy,
yes,
hard.
I am. Because some of my former PCs are potential NPCs in my Horror and Huttenberg game.
Mm-hmm.
And so I have to go back and listen to Terra and Treefell and listen to the voices they use for their characters, because if I decide to bring them into Horror and Huttenberg, I have 1 of 2 choices. 1, I get on the phone and I contact that player and I say, hey, you want to come cameo as your old character for a game session? Taking an NPC that I might need for a plot point and putting it in the hands of a chaotic player who knows what they're going to do with it. And that's the risk I run. Or I try to keep it under roof, and I already got 5 chaotic players who are going to do something I don't expect already. So why add more X factors into this, right? So I have the choice of either bringing them back and feeding them some lines and some ideas of where I want them to do and see if they run with it, or I try to do it myself. So yeah, I actually am going to be doing a little bit of that. So
I try to avoid it just because it usually comes up when somebody is missing from game and their character needs to still be there. And typically in our group, we've kind of landed on if we're not there, our character isn't there. We don't want other people playing our character. Other groups do it differently, but like I think because of that, I don't find myself in a situation where it needs to come up. But situations like, I don't know, mind control, I guess maybe you can play around with that. If you have like a doppelganger or something like that. In the case of the Everstorm game, I know Levi does it a lot. He emulated my character voice with a bajillion duplicates of my character. He did the same thing.
He did a Balrin.
Yeah, did with Balrin.
There were 2 Balrin, so he recently did a Balrin.
And Wrighton, Clint's old character, and Lindell are essentially mirrors of each other's voice. So he's done it 3 times at least in that campaign.
In this campaign. And normally he doesn't have to.
Mm-hmm.
But there's been some weird situations come up that has forced Levi's hand to have to do so. Like,
well,
Morgaine last session was great, though. He nailed it. It was so good. Like,
yeah, that was spot on. So if you missed last time's Everstorm, he had some weird effect going on where there was an illusion. So like Morgaine gets pulled up into the sky by some winged creature and just disappears. And because I rolled an @20 on perception, I saw it. And nobody else saw it, so nobody else is noticing anything's wrong. And I'm looking up there and I'm like, huh, he's still up there though. That's weird. Must be a spell. Okay. So I check, and sure enough, there's an illusion spell there, and I know it's an illusion. All right. So he's having the illusion talking to me, and he sounds exactly like Morgaine. It down to like cadence and just nonchalant nature and everything else.
He nailed Cam's voice pretty good when he did it.
So Skeezer just went with it. Sure, I'm wrong, I guess. Yep. Spells lied.
Yep. It's always funny sometimes how much time and energy we'll dedicate to unraveling the DM fiat of having to deal with a missing player.
I know. I know you guys were like, don't do this, but like I think there is a component of trying to maintain immersion in a game where, like, if any other situation happened and the player was sitting there and a person gets whisked up into the sky, you want to establish that, like, that's what my character would do, is like I would go do what I need to do to get this character back, right? Not just like, oh sure, I'm gonna go cook some food and I'm gonna just go spend the night and then he'll come back later. You know, like that's how, like in a real situation where this stuff comes up, that suddenly you end up in a situation where you know, unless you say adamantly that you're going to do something, it's, you know, like out of character or whatever. Let's see what this means up there. It is pretty amusing, Laugh Love Lindy. It's tough.
Yes, it's interesting. You just don't. There's not a lot of situations where it really comes up.
Yeah, it's pretty rare. But yeah, in that particular case, depending on the setup of the DM fiat, sometimes it's easier to go along with than otherwise. It's like, that was a weird situation. It's like we're about to go into boss mode, and one of our guys gets whisked into the sky. Like
his setup wasn't maybe. He clearly knew what he was going to do, and he clearly knew that he had to remove Morgaine at the end of that session. So he just did something.
Yeah, he just did something.
Had an idea, but yeah, it was.
And I've tried things like that to explain away absences of characters, and it doesn't always go right. And I don't know. I don't know. It's weird. I've had a couple scenes I've run where, like, I set it up, and it was very difficult for the players to go along with it and still be immersed. And I think that's one example of where it happened in Everstorm.
To me, like, chasing what I know as a red herring pulls me out. The more I deal with the hard line fourth wall, the more the fourth wall becomes evident. And so for me, the best thing to do for immersion is to ignore it and get away from it, and not bring any more attention and focus to it than you have to, because the reason it's clearly happening is because the player's not here, and you can visibly tell because it's not on the screen, and his character can't do nothing else.
Yeah.
And so you can't interact with it in any other meaningful way. And it's going to be something that's done with that player when he's back. So for me, the best thing to do is just to quickly acknowledge it and then move on and get to actual stuff you're going to immerse in. So for me, it's the opposite. It's get away from the obvious elephant in the room as quick as you can, because it's an elephant. No surprise. Like,
yeah, I don't know. It's tough because obviously there's different takes on it within the same group. But yeah, I don't know. I find it pretty immersion breaking, but it's like in that situation, I was like, why would we storm the beach one man down? I wouldn't, right? Like there's no well, I mean, there are circumstances you can engineer, but we're not in one of those, you know?
Well, I think of it like this, like and this is, if you want to think of this as a Bowron point of view, then you can consider this a Bowron point of view. You could also just consider it a Dustin point of view, because it's how I am. We're on a boat with a crew of, I don't know, 12, 15 NPCs. At one point, there were 60 on the boat, helping run the boat. So at any point in time, we go in with 5 of us instead of 60 all the time. We go in with 5 instead of 12 all the time. Like going in with 4 instead of 5 is not a man down when you're frequently doing away missions. Like I think like the A-Team. Like the A-Team didn't always have to get Murdoch out of the insane asylum, but occasionally they needed his talents. So,
see, that's an interesting take, because the way I see it isn't like that. The way I see it is like you clearly have trained Navy SEALs, and you got a squad of 5 of them, and then you've got random dude on the street, carpenter dude, guy, farmer, whatever, just random people that are not cut out for this. And so for me, it's like, yeah, obviously those guys don't go. But if I'm down 1 SEAL, I'm in a bad situation.
That's a certain amount of metagaming. How many levels do you think they have or what they're capable of?
I don't think so.
You could say that the dwarf with the colored thread hair, for some reason I can't think of his name off the top of my head.
Toleg?
No, not Toleg. The other one. The one with the colored threads, the one that's
Greg?
Dream. Yes, Greg. Couldn't think of his name.
Yeah, he's got levels.
He could be a 10th level bard or something. Like
he's a warlock, but yeah.
Well, whatever. I'm just saying, whatever he might be, like he can have levels and he's a SEAL. So why are we not taking the SEAL with us on every level?
Because we don't trust him.
Like anyone else.
Because we don't trust him.
I don't trust Bowron either, but you're taking him along. So
yeah, but up until this recent episode, Balrin hasn't tried to kill us, and Griggs has.
Yeah,
so, I mean, it's.
But I'm just saying, he's just one of 15 NPCs on the boat, many of which we do trust. So, I mean, we go in without people all the time. Like,
I still don't think they're particularly competent. At least I don't get that impression from them. And so, like, when it comes to game time, them not coming along doesn't really feel like we're leaving talent. But, it's interesting. If that is a good point.
We recognized that talent when we were fighting Peg.
Well, you guys
brought everyone back off the boat to come fight them all. Like, it definitely happened. So,
hey, good night, Soulstorm. Good night, Soulstorm. And Quill, good night to you. Enjoy. Yeah, it's, I don't know, it's weird. Like, obviously I wasn't there at that game session where you guys took on Peg. The whole thing, I think I missed that particular session, but I don't know, it's still weird to me. Like, if you have a plan and you're going in, one person disappears from, you're like, I would still probably, in any rational place, I would not go. Whereas the nice thing about Skeezer as a character is he's not rational. He does everything randomly and wild and crazy and completely not me. So, like, I can get away with that stuff. But to me, it's like hardcore immersion breaking to me as a player. It's like I know that I'm bending that fourth wall completely over and saying, like, okay, sure, let's go over here. And I don't know. It takes me out of it, but obviously it's a necessary thing to get us to the next scene. So
yeah, I mean, at some point you're going to. That's the thing about it. Like, at some point you're going to make that decision, and you're probably not going to get an answer you like.
No.
So, to me, it's just let's just get away from it and go. Is what I do. That's just my own tactic for it. So
that's not. I can understand that. I mean, I think it's what you're supposed to do, probably. But
yeah. Let's see. And what if everyone hates Bowron according to Dusty? What is the group bringing? Well, Bowron saved most of their asses more often than he's actually done anything that would get them killed. So I think there was
recently it's getting a little bit more even, but at the start for sure. The start he was saving people's asses like left, right, and center.
I saved her. You go back and watch like episode. Well, some of the episodes aren't out there because episodes 1 to 5 are. 5 is the first one you can watch on YouTube, and I think even in that one I saved somebody's ass. But
I think the first time is I was drowning, or the
I
one where it fell down the pit.
Episode 2, I saved you, and then I saved you and someone else in episode 5 when we fell into the pit, or 6 maybe when we fell into the.
That was me and Fulcrum.
Fulcrum, yep. So
yeah, there's a couple scenes.
Fair amount of stuff that early on where Bowron had to. He wasn't necessarily a likable character, but he's useful. So
Yeah. Well, I mean, sometimes there's things roping you together just because you're sitting at a table with the player.
Sure.
In character, I don't know that the characters would have stuck around. I think there is some.
Yeah, we've said that
distinct
about the
points
quite a bit, but as just one of those things. But again, with group comp, something like this week, if you go in with complete group comp, like we couldn't play this week because Cam's not there. Because you can't function in group comp without the group, so we would not be able to play.
Well, what's weird is this week we're going in and
we're down.
Clint's not here and Cam is here.
Right.
So,
yeah.
Got a little switcheroo that's about to happen, which who knows what's going on anyway in the game. Because for those of you guys don't know and haven't been keeping up, our next game is this weekend, I believe, right? It's this Saturday. And at the end of last game, my character ends up just getting teleported away with, I don't know if it's the villain or just a powerful NPC. We haven't really established it, but chances are what just happened was not good. And I don't know where I'm at. So we're all split. I have no idea what to expect this next game. It could go completely crazy. But we do have characters flipping in and out.
But we do have a lot of player absences coming up. So again, you want to see why I don't like group comp. Watch what happens in the combat when you don't have Kodo.
I think it's fine. I think it's. I don't think group comp is necessarily a problem in that relation.
Well, that's because we don't have group comp in this game.
No, we don't.
So
we just have a bunch of random people.
I was trying to think about this earlier today when I was on my walk. I was like, when was the last time we did a group comp in any game? And I don't think the answer is ever.
Sure, we did. We did it in the last campaign.
No, we didn't.
Yeah, we did.
No, we didn't.
Yeah, we did. I mean, you might not have, but we did.
I was the only character that survived that campaign.
I know.
We turned around with the second set.
The second set, we all made characters together, and then we talked about all.
Played the same character.
That's what I'm saying. You didn't, but the rest of us did. So that's what I'm saying is, we built an entire organization around a central concept. We all had a role in that concept. We all had our place in that concept.
Role play, sure, but it wasn't a statistic. Like you guys didn't set up knock it down sort of group combo because that never came.
So
out.
You're talking about ability combos? Is that what you're talking about?
Yeah, that's what you were referring to the other day.
No, well, in that we're talking about more of bringing different assets to the table that can combo. So, like, if you have like all one class, yeah, you could play that way, but you have a lot of aspects of the game not covered, right? So that's a group composition issue. Like if you go into a situation where you need somebody who can pick locks and disable traps and shit, and you don't have that in your group, that's a group composition issue, right? If you have magical shit coming up and you don't have a wizard or somebody of arcane styling to deal with it, that's a group composition issue. It doesn't mean it's a bad game. It just means that you're missing some kind of component that in a rounded group would be able to handle. You know, or a group that has a distribution of skill sets and is able to interwork between one another.
I think that there's what she's saying is just, backstory in RP. I mean, yeah, we all write our backstories, and we all, if you're in a game and your DM's doing any of their job, you're going to have reasons why you're there and why you're doing things. Like that's just part of being in the game itself. Like that part's going to come out. The question is usually in game session 1 is whether you guys already know each other or not. That's usually the only thing you really have to hop over is, hey, how long have we really known each other? Are we a new group? Have we been a group for a long time? Like, so you can go down that road and figure that out on each individual basis. But
I still much prefer an established relationship personally, but
I do sometimes.
I feel like this, let's run into each other randomly and then just start figuring it out never works. Well, it feels awkward every time.
So so for the same reason why I don't like DM Fiat and why I don't mess with DM Fiat, I don't like to mess with the early getting to know you stage. You're going to be in a group and you're going to run together because you're all players at the table. So why sit around for 3 hours trying to figure out why you want to run around with these guys? You're going to do it. So you might as well just say that you already know each other. Like you might as well go into it with a certain amount of whether you like each other or not is irrelevant. There's people who have to work close together who don't like each other at all. But you can at least go into it and say, hey, we're all here to do a particular job, and that's what we're doing. So,
hey, good night, Animal G. Yeah,
Later,
we'll probably
Animal G.
wrap it up relatively soon. It seems like everyone's starting to fall
we're
asleep.
not-
But
this isn't going to go till 2 a.m. I was joking.
no,
But,
but thanks for coming in.
but
Yeah, go ahead.
no, I was just saying. So I think that when it's something that's inevitable that you have to do for an above the table reason, I don't like to spend a lot of in-game character RP time rationalizing it later, like in the game session. Like, just
That's interesting because for
leave
me,
a certain amount of that and move on to the things that are more important about what you're going to be doing.
see, that's for me though. That's I think another fundamental issue where we're different is that hand wave it and just go on because you have to creates tons of trouble down the road to me. Like, it's the entire campaign. I'm like, how the fuck do I justify our characters continuing to work together? I can't. So I have to fake it and bend over backwards every session to try to make it work. Whereas if it's just worked out initially, where all the players are like, okay, here's how we get along, here's why we work together, here's blah 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 blah. You don't have that issue. It's one and done, and then the rest of the time it all works. And that's why I really don't like. I mean, we just did it in my game, but the random come together and just meet each other. It creates these really loose connections to characters unless there's a really strong setup. And even a strong setup doesn't always work. You know?
Well, because characters are supposed to change.
Yeah.
If I start out being your best friend, if I'm playing a character who's a dynamic character, he's not going to be the same person by the end. So if we're going to start as a tight-knit group, you can expect by the end of it probably not being.
Well, there could be friction in there, but...
Well, I'm just saying, a lot of times dynamic characters are going to change greatly. Things are going to happen, and they're not going to be the same person at the end. You're going through 20 levels, if it's a D&D game, of Crucible that's going to cause you to be something different by the time you're done. So
sure, but
if you're a tight-knit coterie at Humanity 7, you may not like me when I'm down to Humanity 2 because things are going to happen to me. So
right, but you know how to interact along that path, right? So, like, it's not that...
Because you're going to figure that out along the way either way. Characters' interaction with each other are going to figure that out along the way no matter what. So if you want to play X-Men first day at the Xavier Mansion, you're on a mission to go do X, Y, and Z, and that's why you're all going to work together and figure it out. Now, after a while, you just start to learn that Wolverine and Cyclops don't get along well. But when shit matters the most, they pull their shit together, they do the job, and then they go back to bickering with each other again. So to me, it's just a matter of that's what the game experience is continuing to find ways to keep gelling the characters more and more together. And that should be part of the goal of where you're heading to, not a start point necessarily. Because if you're a start point, the only way you can go is apart. And so...
Well, only if you decide that you need to change that way. I don't think you need to do that. I think your relationships can change in ways that don't break them. I mean, it doesn't necessarily equate to always has to go the opposite thing of what it is currently. And I think... Not
necessarily, but if there's 5 or 6 characters, one of them's probably going to.
Maybe it doesn't... I don't think so, but I think there are things that can happen throughout a game where characters would grow apart. But I think those are more interesting in a situation where it's established in a way that makes sense, because then you understand how it's breaking apart in a way that makes sense. So, like, that dynamic, that fight or disagreement is rooted in characters that understand one another and that have a desire to maintain that relationship. So, like, the tension is there because there is a desire to keep it going. Whereas I think when you have these loosely, bond because you're a group and you have a job to do right now, the second any daylight opens up, you splinter. Like, it's immediate. Like, there's no reason why you should be spending your downtime with them or going to a bar together. It's just like, they just don't do that, right? Like, some of them might, but most people aren't. Like, if it's just like the dude I work with, some of my work friends end up being friends, but I wouldn't say they're my friends that I hang out with all the time, usually, right? Like, when I'm at the job, sure, I'm hanging out with them, but the second I'm not at that workplace, I'm probably not hanging out with them, you know?
I think there's some cases where that's true. I think there's also a lot of cases where when you're adventuring parties or when you're characters that are in these fantasy realms, you're not just Joe Schmo working at the NPC potion shop. going home to his wife and kids every day or anything like that. This is the job we got to do. You're the Navy SEALs. You're the best of the best. You didn't all come together from the same little club and university. You were handpicked from everyone in the country, thrown into the crucible and said, you're a team. And it didn't matter how much you liked each other. There's the job you're going to go do. So, how those people feel about each other when they're on shore leave or when they're back at base and they get to go back home, they may not hang out with each other much. But when things are needed and you're going on a mission, which is what you're eventually doing as an adventuring party, is you're on a mission, you pull your crap together, you put your differences aside, and you get something done that needs to be done.
I think when you have a
we're
specific
boat,
task,
so it's easy for us.
Well,
we're stuck
yeah.
on a boat. There's nowhere else we can go. But,
no option. Yeah.
So to answer Air Laser's question, the reason they bring Bound along is he's on the boat.
Yeah. He's one of the only 2 NPCs or PCs that can actually pilot the boat, even if he crashes it every time. But
hey,
yeah,
Levi,
it's.
You know what? Burl would crash the boat more often if Levi actually rolled water vehicles.
I know. I'm just giving you shit.
I actually have to roll water vehicles. Everyone else gets to drive the boat for free.
Yep. But well, yeah, it's kind of funny. But I think that's true if you have a mission that is like, all right, the government is putting together the super soldiers to go fight the bad guy, and like it's completely built that way. That works for the period of time which that mission is occurring. For the like campaign where things are like moving and shaking, different events are occurring, there's branching stories and stuff, I think there's just too many opportunities for those relationships to be like, well, we don't need to be hanging out anymore. And that would be the natural thing that should happen. But because you're a gaming group, you're like, nope, don't do that. And to me, that always feels weird. Like,
well, I mean, to me, it's more likely is that people don't realize how long it takes to get to level 20.
okay.
And player attention spans will wane on their current character and they'll pick up new ones along the way or want to change and do something else completely before you get to the end. So I don't know. For me, it's like my characters, like I roleplay who my character is. He has a certain amount of interest, curiosity in usually what other characters and stuff are doing.
Okay.
So, he doesn't necessarily always show it. Sometimes
I wouldn't think that Bowern is interested in anybody's story.
He says things now and then, but it has to do a lot with the parallels between his own issues and the issues he sees going on with Skeezer and Fulcrum in particular.
Okay.
So, like I said, he knows exactly who he is, knows exactly where he came from, and is spending his whole life erasing that name and getting away from it.
Okay.
And encourages you and Fulcrum to do the same. But you guys are hell-bent on finding your origin and finding your maker and using that to define you. And Bowron keeps telling you guys repeatedly, you're focusing on the wrong things. Go be your own person. Go spend what time you have doing the things you want to do instead of worrying about where you came from. So he says these things. It's just there's not a lot of emphasis by which, because he's not exactly going to tell you all about being the youngest prince of a king or anything else. He's just going to tell you, yeah, you're wasting your time. Just trust me, But so it's all kind of there, but it's not super heavy. But at the same time, like, he does have interest in figuring these things out. And with yours in particular, he was told that this Twixelplex guy might actually be able to get them all back home, which is the overall goal that everyone kind of shares at the moment anyway. So, this is the movie. What was that? Alive, where they all get stranded on the mountain, right? The airplane crashes and they all got to get back home. So, at that point, it's a survival game. So you're stuck together at this point. So that's just kind of where we are. So being that's the case and that's the mission, it's been less about, hey, let's make sure we're all good drinking buddies and let's figure out how we're going to get back home alive is the goal.
Okay, but let's say this next session, not to extend this conversation out too terribly long, but let's say that next session things work out, we get put back across the Everstorm. We're now back where we came from, and there's no pressing mission. Do we just immediately splinter, or we stick together?
Well, if we get all the way back and there's no pressing mission, then what is Levi doing but ending his campaign anyway?
Well, I'm saying if there's like a break in time, let's say like out of character as players, we know there's going to be more story coming, but as in character for all of our characters, knowledge, we're done.
That takes a hook. That 110% depends on Levi's hook for whatever the next segment of story is. Right now, there's no hook because his one hook that he used has got us on the line, and we can't get off the hook if we wanted to.
Sure.
But whenever you come back to a hub, when you come back to a hub and the job is done, every segment after that has to apply a new hook.
Sure.
And that hook has to catch all the players, and Levi, knowing his player characters, will hook each one of them and weave it back in. Or otherwise, you could say that about even the most tight-knit groups. If you don't have a good hook, the whole group's not going to go on it. So it's no different. You still have to hook everyone back in, and that's the DM's job more so than the player's job. It's not my job to hook Jeff into wanting to come back to play because my character's going. He's got to have his own personal reason for wanting to go, or he's not going to want to go no matter what.
Yeah, I guess this is what I'm bringing this point up for, is that in a relationship where it's just mission-based and we don't have an established relationship outside of that mission, the second we hit a hub where there's no obvious threat, we're going to go away from one another. And the other option where you have an established relationship that's developed over time and is cohesive, when you hit these hubs, you probably continue doing shit together because you're like hanging out with one another. So like that downtime isn't an immediate party split. There are ways you can write a slap the party back together thing, but it's exactly that. It's like bringing the guys back out of retirement and putting them in the next action movie. You can do it, but it's a lot more natural, I think, to have a situation where people genuinely want to be working together and hanging out together.
I don't think that that's something that, and until a campaign truly ends, I don't think you ever have to worry about that happening.
From an out-of-character perspective, yeah.
I don't think you ever have to worry about it. Like you're hitting hypotheticals that don't really happen in a game.
Well, I'm hitting what is immersion and immersion breaking. I mean, that's the reason why I'm bringing it up, is because to me, I know we're going to break the fourth wall and pretend that in metagame that, we're going to continue hanging out together, or we're going to have to because we're all sitting at the same table together. But that's, to me, immersion breaking.
Well, it's only immersion breaking until Levi drops the hooks, and then it makes sense.
Sure.
So once the hooks are dropped, it makes sense. Then you don't have to worry about it. So as long as he does a good job with his hooks, then you're going to go on the next mission. You're going to be there. You don't have to worry about it. Same reason why the hook always happens that gets Wolverine to come back and work with the X-Men. Like, he goes out on his own, does his own thing in Madripoor as Patch, kicks some butt, drinks some beers, and then, damn, here comes a hook, and boom, he's back over with the X-Men again at the mansion, taking orders from Cyclops. Like, it's just how it goes. Like, that, because if the hooks are sharp enough, you get everyone back on board, then they're a unit again. You do enough of those units together, and eventually you know those people are going to be there, have your back, and you end up building those relationships over 20 levels. Like, it doesn't have to necessarily be there at game session 1. Because, like, I don't know, for me, sometimes it takes a good 4 or 5 sessions to even figure out really fully who a character is. So it's hard to go into game session 1 being like, we're all the best of friends, and I don't even really know who my character fully is yet. So
but there's a significant difference between kind of morphing a character a little bit and coming to figure out who they are, and having situations where you have characters who absolutely wouldn't work together under really any situation, but then because you're sitting together as a player group, you have to. Like, I think that's like something we saw with Air Laser's campaign that they're talking about. They had an evil character that was actively fucking with one of the other characters, trying to assassinate them, stealing shit from them, doing shit like that. And it was, you guys are on the same team, so you're going to keep going together. Like, well, no. Like, if I was in a group with you and I try to kill you, you wouldn't be in a group with me anymore. Like, that would just be the end of that, right? Like, you would leave. Like,
Air Laser did a good job of shooting her own example in the foot, though, because Professor Xavier Magneto is the perfect example of what I'm talking about. They morally disagree, but because they're both mutants and the humans are trying to kill them all, they work together all the time. They were best friends. They sit down and play chess with each other in the park between episodes of Magneto trying to kill them. Like, that is literally two best friends who sit there through and play chess with each other in the park over their moral disagreements. Like, it is the exact kind of thing I'm talking about.
Yeah. I mean, well, that one's that's a difficult case to make because that's based on real people and their relationship together.
It's true. I'm just saying though, but that's
Mhm.
based on when you're pushing for characters that are based in reality. That's how real people are, because they're based in reality. So that's how people are.
I don't know. Based in reality, you try to stab me, I'm not going to be hanging around with you anymore.
Well, okay.
Period.
Stabbing is a little rough, yes.
Or let's say I broke into your house and I started stealing all your stuff and selling it. You wouldn't be hanging out with me as a friend anymore, right? If we worked together, we would not have a positive relationship together.
No,
right?
I think there's a certain level of evil, yes, that you can't come back from in a friendship. Sure.
Mhm.
No, I think there is a certain level you can't completely cross. But
yeah. So I think it's important. That's another group comp talk that I think is important. Is that, like, I think if you got a character who's very particular, like say like you have a code of honor that's gonna make you have trouble with other characters, or you're the evil character or whatever, I think there's a responsibility to make sure that your character works with the group and that makes sense. And I think a lot of times that doesn't happen. And people are like, fuck it, just deal with it.
There's a certain amount of that session zero stuff that does cover. And, you're talking like, if you're going to play something that's like full on evil villain, then yes. Yeah, your character probably has to have some redeemable qualities, which is why Magneto works, because while he is vile and sometimes cruel and sometimes violent, he's also got a certain amount of redeemable human qualities that keep someone like Xavier believing that someday he's going to turn around. And that's what you have to make that character dynamic work. That's why he meets him for chess, is to continually talk to him, to try to convince him to come back to the way he remembers him being 30 years ago or whatever,
Well,
so
it's two
you gotta have
components
some
there.
redeemable. If you're completely irredeemable, then you're not a character that should be at the table probably with four other characters if you're completely irredeemable.
Well, I think it also depends, because like let's say Xavier's not in the picture, right? And there's Magneto and Wolverine, right? It doesn't matter how redeemable Magneto is. If there isn't a character who is built around redemption, that's not going to be a dynamic that comes out at the table, right? Like Wolverine's going to be like, I don't give a fuck, get the fuck out of here, right? Like, and that story ends. Like, that relationship just doesn't go anywhere. But because Xavier specifically is about trying to change people through, mediation and, coming to a peaceful resolution and convincing violent people to go nonviolent, that kind of stuff, because he's there, that relationship has a possibility, and then only because Magneto has the hint that maybe it's possible. So, like, there's two things that have to be true for that to work. And again, that's a thing you have to kind of work at as a group. Say, like, here's what I want to do. Okay, well, we got these characters who are going to be able to live that out because we've kind of developed them in a certain way. And then it works. But if you don't have that conversation, that's not a thing you can expect to happen at the table. And it probably will just spiral into trash, like, really quickly.
I think, I think you have to. A lot of people sitting down at tables with people for the first time playing in a group. Yeah, some of those things you definitely can't just waltz in with and decide you're going to do. Your GM, DM, ST, whichever one depending on the system you're in, like, has a certain responsibility to kind of decide what some of that tone is, and to talk to the individual players about what they will or won't allow to happen in their game. I think there's a certain amount of that's true. I don't know if 2 or 3 other people can completely dictate what one other person wants to play.
Sure. I mean, I'm not saying anyone should be dictating what somebody plays.
So if an ST or a DM wants to run some certain plot lines with a character, this, that, the other, for some redemption stories and everything else, and the DM's cool with it, like, the other players may may find out that that's in the game. It's not necessarily anything they have to agree upon before session number 1 if the DM is down for it, but I would think that the DM would at least inform the other players like that these things may be on the table. So as long as everything is within the realm of what the DM decides is on the table and the players are all notified of that, like, you know, which things get picked by individual characters or picked by individual characters for their own individual reasons. So, you know, we're a group that's been playing together for long enough that like we already kind of know each other's shticks to a degree. So, you know, we kind of bypass session 0 a little bit because of it. Maybe sometimes more than we should, but at the same time, like we roll through because we find our niches and we kind of sit in those pretty well. So I don't know.
Yeah, I don't know. I think for me, I personally preferred having a little bit more pre-game work done, where we had a little bit more established and that there was more thought that had already been done. I do not like the new approach at all that we're going on with it. Just like, we're there, go. Like that's really off-putting to me.
I mean, you're running a game and we didn't do it for your game.
Yeah, well, I mean, we're kind of doing it. Yeah.
I mean, if it's something you believe in strongly, you didn't do it in your game twice. So
I didn't do it because the people playing the game preferred this other way from what they vocalized. So I went with what they wanted to play.
I mean, I know we all just kind of made characters and just showed up for the module. I mean, some of that's because it was a module.
It's a module,
so we didn't take modules real seriously. But I kind of thought this time around there might be some for your branching into, but it didn't seem to be
because
the case.
We had 2 characters that were maintained from the previous game. It really wasn't something that could be done, right? Like, and then one of the other guys is a person who champions the idea of not having pre-established relationships, and then the other 2 are indifferent. So, like, all right, you can't really have a solid game 0 connection at that point because there's already 2 groups coming together. So I didn't go with it, but more of that was just because there's a strong opinion on one side, and fine, whatever, go for it. But as a player,
you still
as a player, I really don't like that approach. But to each their own.
I know it's, again, goes back to our time at Larp, but like all Larp characters were individuals, almost all made on their own. Like, very rarely did we even come into, as a group of friends, into Larp with characters that were linked to each other. Like,
yeah, but that game is about individuals and their individual needs and desires and goals that happen to sometimes be a group. I mean, that vampire at its core is selfish, self-indulgent activity, right? Like, that is what you're there to do. You just need the other people to accomplish it. And so, like, it works in that case, but in a group that is completely built around groups working at a goal together, it's not the same situation.
Yeah, maybe I see some of that. I think with a game that's as political as Vampire can be, you definitely are more. World of Darkness in general is very individualistic. Unless you're playing Werewolf, then you're a pack. Pack is family. They're that group that will hate each other, and still the mission is bigger than them. Like, Werewolf very much fits that mentality. The Vampire is kind of the opposite. Even your coterie mates, you don't ever trust them. So
yeah. And that's just the nature of the game, yeah.
Yeah.
So, like, I don't know. I think there are different approaches at work in different games and different things because of what they are. Like,
setting makes a difference.
Yeah, in Dungeons and Dragons, I don't want a inter-party conflict, really. Like, it's okay between some people. Like, I'm fine if you and I want to sit down and be like, hey, for this game, let's have a character spat that goes back and forth. Okay, cool, let's do it. Is Fast and the Furious a good example of a werewolf pack? I guess so. Yeah.
The answer is yes.
Okay. Yeah, I could see it. Yeah, because there's all kinds of rites and things that are binding a group together, and you do rituals and shit to make it fit together and reinforces relationship, and you have missions you have to do together and all that kind of stuff. So yeah, I could see that. Like, I think Werewolf does a lot culturally to make that work. you know.
Yeah. Well, yeah, and as a game system, like it
Hey, thanks for the follow.
Yeah,
Dora the Explorer.
It very heavily pushes the auspice roll, which again then pushes a little more of the team aspect of werewolf, because
you're probably not going to have 4 Philodoxes hanging out together, right? You're going to have some spread, right?
Right. There's going to be a certain amount of spread, so flavored by what tribe they are and what breed, but it'll definitely the auspice is definitely kind of the class for that system.
Yeah, I think it's something. It's a valuable thing. Like if you're sitting down to a group and everyone makes their characters in how's this guy again? All right.
I thought I recognized that name.
Yeah, I did too.
The mods will take care of that in a second.
Air Laser, would you show them to the door?
Sure, she's already on it.
Appreciate it. So anyway, the good work, excellent.
Thank you. Mods.
What was I saying before that derailed me?
I don't know. I lost it. I saw that hop in when I saw that person follow. I was like, I think we've seen that before.
Yeah. Yeah, they're all over the place tonight. I can't recall what I was going to say now, so I guess that kills the conversation at that point.
It shows that deleted it, Air Laser. You did good.
Yep, you did it. So it is actually 1:46. It's getting pretty late. And
you're clearly getting tired. You lost train of thought.
Yeah, just a touch. So I say we put a pin in this. There's a lot of good turf there to keep talking about, but we got plenty of shows coming up.
We got other shows coming up soon, so we'll have more opportunities to delve into some of it.
Absolutely. So tomorrow, Bardic Knowledge is back. So if you want to go with some music, seeing how it's put together and all that kind of stuff, I have no idea what Cam's doing tomorrow, but he will be back tomorrow with Bardic Knowledge, so go check that out. Wednesday, we are playing Pathfinder 2, so we're going to be getting into the first session with this. Now, we'll be down a player, so Clint's not going to be there, but we're picking up a player because Tim's going to be there. So we'll be rocking in that. So come hang out with us on Wednesday. We'll get some Pathfinder action going. Thursday, we may be playing video games. I don't know. Clint's out, and so we'll have to figure out amongst the rest of us. We want to do a stream on Thursday night, so stay tuned.
Can I briefly interrupt?
You certainly can.
All right. So since we don't know if we're going to be doing 7 Days to Die on Thursday, I'm going to be posting some stuff in the Discord right as soon as Wisdom Check is over that you're going to want to see. Because crazy shit happened today.
Sure
that is all. Check the Discord. My fool's errand of thinking I was ever going to build a stairway to the ceiling was... I can't even tell you in words how wrong I was. And it's a rare day that I'll admit to being wrong.
That is a fact.
Wrong. I was wrong.
Actually, we need a screenshot. Somebody clip that because that needs to be stated.
It doesn't happen often. You can clip it if you want to. But
I'm going to make that the thumbnail.
Go for it. You go for it.
Yep. But yeah, it's pretty cool. It's interesting. Hey, where did our screen just go? There, it came back. That's weird. It just went all black for no apparent reason on my screen. Yeah, so there's some fascinating stuff afoot, is all I'm saying. And I happen to know a little bit of it, but I haven't seen it. So I'm also eager to see what he's talking about. So that's something to look forward to. And then this week we have other things going on too, don't we? We got game this weekend
Thursday,
on Sunday.
Whether or not 7 Days to Die happens, we will be back Saturday for Everstorm. That'd be 10 p.m. Central Time. I don't think Levi has titled the next episode. There is possibility. I've seen and heard rumor, a possibility that you might be getting Morgaine's Excellent Journey before then.
Nice. That would be great.
So I guess we'll find out what happened to real Morgaine while Illusion Morgaine was talking to Skeezer. Maybe we'll, like we did with Bowron. So maybe we'll get to see a little one-off with Morgaine. So
it'd be pretty sweet.
And then we'll be back. We'll be back Saturday for Everstorm. And then Sunday, 5 p.m., Jeff will be back with me because I'm running Zweihander. It's Horror Huttenberg, Chapter 3. We'll be back Sunday for that. It's Lightning in a Bottle is the name of the episode.
All right.
And you'll be able to find out exactly what that means and maybe, just maybe, get to meet Bravo von Helfer.
I'm going to try to avoid that at all costs, but we'll see. Make sure you join the Discord if you haven't. Check out the YouTube. And also check out David Lee Pancake's art. And I think that gets us all the way through everything, right? I'm trying to think if there's anything else we need to say.
So.
Yeah, awesome. Well, thank you, everyone. Do we have anybody we can rate at this point? I know it's crazy late.
I'll find somebody. Give me just a second.
Awesome. And while he looks for that, thank you, everyone who came and hung out with us after hours. We like to do these little encore sessions, I guess. It's some cool stuff. It's fun when it's just us sometimes. But you can see some of the other episodes, by the way. Like I got last week's episode up today. So you'll have, if you want to talk about werewolf, like we were talking at the end, the whole session yesterday or last week is on there now. And I'm getting the rest of the Pathfinder stuff up there. So that'll be up soon.
All right. We're heading over to Gathering of Nerds. They're playing some Vampire. So we're going to stop in and talk to them. So thank you all. We'll see you again next week.
Bye-bye.